Okay. So we're going to have two meetings this evening. The first one is a special meeting workshop on the ARP funding monies that we want to talk about as a group. Since we can't get together when it's not in the meeting, we figured we'd have a workshop to discuss these things. Then we'll close this special meeting workshop at approximately 6:30. And we'll stay online, but then we'll come back and open our regular meeting at 6:30. Okay, that's when we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance and the other things that we normally do. So roll call, we'll call this meeting to order. It's, myself, Bob Carlson, the first selectman, Selectwoman Nicole Porter, and Selectman Brett Mastriani. Also Admin Finance Director Christine Diaz. So what I did, I sent you last week a list of just my thoughts on some ways we can use the funding. Two things I kept in my mind when I was developing this list was what came out of the community conversation and what kind of feedback we had from the people that were here that day. And also the information we received that day, that as of the Thursday before that, the state had decided that they were going to came up with a final ruling that we could use a loss of revenue up to $10 million towards municipal spending. So I took that into consideration also. But just to look at my list, and then I'd love to hear what you, the other two selectmen, have to say, what they want to add, what they want to take out. The first thing was I figured I'd start with money we already had earmarked, which was for the Small Business Relief Fund of $100,000, previously earmarked for use by the Board of Selectmen. We have voted on that to earmark it, not to approve it yet. We're waiting for more information from the EDC on how they want to roll that out. If they have the information back to us prior to the town meeting that we'll have sometime in March, then we'll put it on that town meeting agenda. Secondly, we can cross this one out. The senior center had a refrigerator go south. It was going to cost us about $1,500. But we had some materials we returned to a vendor on the ceiling. We were replacing a ceiling for them. And we're using the monies that we're getting from that credit, as well as some money that they have in their account to pay for the $1,500. So I do not need to take it out of the ARPA funding at this time. The North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company software, that was in your package. You probably saw that. It was a request, $7,500. Did you get that in your packet? Okay, so at the end, we'll leave that for the end, and then we'll discuss if we want to move that forward or not. Next, 298 Building Demolition. So if there's one thing we heard at a community conversation, it was demolition of at least the one-story wing. That seemed to be almost unanimous. A little bit less unanimous was saving part of the one-story wing. There was some thought about saving the cafeteria. Because it had all the heating, the boiler room is under the cafeteria. There's heating there. The water comes in from Main Street under there. It distributes to both the Wheel Library and distributes to the rest of this building from there. Some thoughts were recreation could possibly use it as their recreation center for indoor activities. We could use it for fundraising with the schools, whether it be awards banquets for sports teams, spaghetti suppers. The Lions might be able to use it for an occasional, maybe a fish and chips dinner or something, because it has a full kitchen. We also thought, the things that we heard, how do we protect the elderly? How do we protect the people in need? There's a thought we could possibly even use it for a warming center. We can't do a full-blown, or we could, but it would be very expensive to do a full-blown shelter in North Stonington. There's one in Stonington, and the reason they don't have them everywhere is they don't have enough Red Cross people to man them. You have to have pantries available, food available, cots, sleeping conditions, and we just don't have all that. It would cost a lot of money to have that, but we could have a warming center, a place where people could come in, spend some time, get warm. There's plenty of plugs in that room to plug their phones in. If we wanted to, on a case-by-case basis, bring in food, we do have a kitchen there to do that. So my thought was possibly saving and this would cost go in front of the town, and they would have to decide ultimately. It's not our decision, it's the town's decision. That we could possibly save that and make it some sort of a North Stonington community center, which a lot of different people could use it. It would still be, if it's rec, it'd still be considered educational according to the library. I ran this by Amy Kennedy just to make sure this would even fly. The fact that it's, we'd be using it for a warming center, would be tough for the library to say that, no, that you shouldn't be able to do that, when the library themselves is always trying to be that group that's doing things. We have Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center now who's going to the library on Thursdays because they want to do something in that way. And if we could do things for the school, whether it be awards, banquets, and fundraising and so on, it's still school oriented. So that's a possibility. But the biggest thing is the demolition and how much is that going to cost the town? So I've just made a short story long, go a roundabout way of saying I want to put $1 million of the 1.2 million ARPA funds towards that project, whatever that number is. We don't have that yet. We'll be going out to RFP probably in about another month. But we're looking at a combination of ARPA funding, if it gets approved by the Board of Finance and then through a town meeting, because it's $1 million, possibly some money out of the undesignated fund, and some monies that we would have to go out and look for funding. Next on my list, Cultural Coalition. There was a lot of mixed thoughts about when we gave them money the first time. You know, why do we give them money? They didn't really present a lot to us. And it seemed like it was, we're just handing out money left and right to different organizations that had their hand out. Since then, they've come back to us. They've told us what they're doing with the money. And when we heard community conversation, we heard mental illness. We heard people getting together, because people were depressed. And the Cultural Coalition is talking about things like No Stove Fest and the fair and Memorial Day Parade and things like that, that bring people back together and get people excited and maybe out of the doldrums. So I wasn't opposed to giving them another 1%. After school program recreation, I put 0 because I'm covering that. If the town decides to do something with the cafeteria, part of the one-story wing, then that money could be used towards that. The last thing is that leaves us $145,574.04, according to my numbers. Add another 1,500 to that because we don't need it for the refrigerator. So what do we do with that money? Because of the new ruling from the state on what we can do with ARPA funds, I propose we use that money to pay off the expenses for this building. Last year, they cost us about $145,000. The town knows it's coming. It wasn't really budgeted for in the last budget. I think it would be a nice thing for the town not to have to pick up the bill on this building yet another year when we have the money through ARPA funding that we can use to pay it off. So we wipe the slate clean and we move forward into next year. There's some exciting things happening as a possibility next year. We spoke about in the past. We do have a possible person that's going to lease the entire second floor of the two-story wing. And if we get the one-story wing or most of it demolished, that'll cut the expenses also. So going to next year, we're in better position than we are this year. But this year, I'd like to use the 145 and change to bail out the town and this year's expenses. Take comments, suggestions. That's all I have.
Good.
Just looking at the list, I do like the idea of the demolition, the 1 million going into it. My hesitation is the Cultural Coalition for 15,000. Until we see what they're utilizing the other money for, the 15,000, I think there's other mental health, other ways to address that concern with our money. As I look at our budget and I see the increase in the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center and things like that, there's other avenues that we can utilize. I think hearing some of the discussion of what they're utilizing the initial round for to help advertise the fair and No So Fest, which I think are great opportunities. I don't know how well it's directly impacting our residents and the people in North Stonington. Yeah, will it help bring more people to the fair and to No So Fest? That's what I got out of that presentation the other day. But as far as impacting the local residents affected during the pandemic, I don't see it. So I wouldn't be in favor of giving them an additional 15,000. If that's where we want to put our money towards mental health concerns, then I think there's other avenues for us to look at. The software, I guess my question on that, so in the letter, it says it wasn't a capital expenditure because it was under a dollar value. Is that why I'm?
Yes, the threshold that was decided by the capital improvement work group is $7,500. Since it is, sorry, it's $10,000. And since that was $7,500, it did not meet the threshold. And it was also not submitted at the time that the capital improvement work group met and created the capital plan. So it was late and too low.
And it's not something that they can operationalize with their regular budget.
I think the danger in giving them an additional $7,500 for a one-time expenditure is then it could potentially then give them another $7,500 the next year that they're not going to need since it's a one-time expense.
Was that brought up prior? Any discussion on this? Is it, I guess I don't know. I need to know more what it does and what it provides for them. And is the one we have outdated?
From what I understand, the one that we have is outdated, and that's why they need to update the software that they use. I had heard some talk about it, but didn't know that it was formally going to be included in their budget request until they submitted their budget request the week that budgets were due. And then I reached back out to the chief and said, you know, we've already done the capital. This wasn't included and it doesn't meet the threshold. Then he said, can I submit it for rescue plan? And I said, go ahead.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it sounds like it ends the end of the year, which I'm assuming is next, this coming December 31st. And then they have nothing after that lined up if they don't go with this. And it sounds like it's for reporting purposes to both the state and the federal government as far as meeting those requirements to be eligible for grants. So we would not be eligible if we did not have this. I think that we wouldn't be eligible to apply for grants is how I understood it.
Yeah, it surprises me that, I'm not saying this is bad. It just surprises me that it's expiring at the end of the year and we just are hearing about it.
I'm assuming next year. I mean, like next December. So we have a full.
Okay, so you're saying 2023.
Well, I mean, he sent us the letter that is dated January something. If he's saying at the end of the year, I'm assuming he means December 31st of 2022.
You know,
Right.
they will be presenting to us in the Board of Finance in a few weeks for the budget anyway. We can table this for then and just ask them to explain this
Yeah.
in greater detail that day.
And that might be good because Board of Finance would have to hear this too, correct? Isn't
Right.
that the process you're going
So
through?
after we go through all of these, we will go to the Board of Finance. And then what I'd like to do, unlike what happened in the last administration, is take this as one package to a town meeting, even if they're under $20,000, and let the town hear about the entire package of expenditures and let the town decide. So I'm not looking to get us to approve any of these things on our own, just approve them to bring them to Board of Finance. But we can wait on that because we're not going to do a town meeting till probably sometime in third week in March. So.
Now, if we are moving forward, and that seems to be the consensus out of the community conversation about the one-story wing, can we use some of this? I mean, it'll be a small amount to actually put together the RFP and put that out prior to our town meeting. So then we have numbers in place. So we know exactly.
That's the plan. So I'm meeting with myself, Tim Brennan, Gary Nino, Kyle Johnson, Donnie Hill, myself and Christina meeting on the February 8th at 4:00 at Tim's office, or probably the conference room at the new town hall, just to start thinking about how they are written. The reason I invited the people I did is because obviously Kyle's background, Gary's done RFPs for FISA, the building inspector, to let us know, what we can do and what we can't do. Makes sense to get that group together. So last time the RFPs were written by Christine without a lot of help. This time she's actually going to, she'll put them together and write them for us, but I think that to get that knowledge in one room, again, Donnie Hill's part of it also.
Is it beneficial to hire an engineer to help with that process, to go through it? So I've got feedback from a few of the people that were looking at bidding and talked about the process and the information out there. And one of them suggested that we should have the readings from, well, the old study, if that's still accessible, of the contaminants, the PCBs, where they're located, so that way it's bid properly. And I don't know if that's a new test we'd have to do, or if there's an engineer that can walk us through the process of it.
So the idea is to have the most thorough RFP as possible, so we don't have to, we don't have an overage. When people come in to take it down, they said, oh, we didn't know we were gonna do that. We didn't know you were gonna do that. So I actually was thinking of having somebody, maybe a couple of people that bid on it the first time, not to bid, just giving some counseling on how, when you put an RFP together. I don't want them to put it together for us because that wouldn't be right, but just give me some background.
Okay.
But yeah, the intent is to have numbers when we roll out the
So
town meeting.
Do we have need any funds for that, for coming up with the RFP, do you think?
I don't know, but if the money for the end balance wouldn't be spent right away, and if we table the cultural coalition, there'll be money left in the RFP funding if we need it.
Okay.
You all set? I agree. I definitely heard loud and clear during the community conversation, demolition of the building. I have a question about keeping the cafeteria. In my mind, I'm trying to imagine that initial part when you go down the hall and you take your first, you take your right, you have that part, then you have the cafeteria, then you have that other wing. So how would we take down how would we keep, like, how would that look?
So it would look like a freestanding building in a field.
Oh,
So what you would have to do
Okay.
is the two wings would come off, but you'd have to close in the two sides. The things that, and again, the town will decide this, but and we'll probably put together a list of positives and negatives when it comes to doing this. It's probably gonna be more money to take down just the two wings and keep that building
Yeah.
and retrofit it. But it's that versus what purpose it could serve the town as a community
Yeah.
center. So, yeah, it'd be a freestanding building. It would have to have bushes put around it to make it look decent. And I picture it as you drive down Main Street, the sign says North Stonington Community Center.
yeah. So I'm up in the air. I mean, personally, I'll go on record in saying that I think I personally think the whole first story wing needs to be taken down. So I'm absolutely in support of the $1 million for earmarking for that. I do think that we need to educate the residents, because I have also heard, what do you mean people want to use the funds, the ARPA funds to take down the building? Because in their minds, they think that it should be, and what it was originally for, it should be earmarked for people and things that suffered during the pandemic. So I think that we need to educate the public to make sure that they understand that the rules around this money absolutely allow us to do something like this. I agree with Brett. I want to see from the Cultural Coalition, and I registered for the meeting it's tomorrow night, right? I want to see what their plans are for the 15,000 we've already given them before we earmark something else. Although I love the idea of expanding No Stow Fest and making the agricultural fair better and reaching out to more people and having it benefit more people. I just want to see what they're doing with the first amount before we. I also wanted to clarify. So money that has already been approved, not earmarked, but approved, is the per diem firefighter, correct?
Yeah.
Out of the ARPA funds. The small amount, the 2,000 we gave to the community conversation group,
Mhm.
right? The Cultural Coalition for the 15,000.
Mhm.
And then is there anything else?
Yeah, we gave money to Pawcatuck Neighborhood
Pawcatuck
Society for
Neighborhood Center.
15,000, Ledge Light for 15,000. I think we gave 2,000 to the
CCA, okay,
EDC, we gave
the small, yeah,
5,000.
Okay,
And then the COG, we gave $10,092 for their planner position.
okay,
Oh, and okay, let me just go through them in order because we're skipping around. So Ledge Light, we gave 15,000. The COG, we gave $10,092. The fire company, we gave $165,000. Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, $15,000. $15,000 was approved for the municipal notification system. So that's the no-stow alert. 15,000 to the Cultural Coalition. 7,500 for technology for running hybrid meetings. 15,000 for the business development new hire incentive program through economic development. $1,092.28 for new portable signage that we use for notifications. $2,000 for the TVCCA senior nutrition. $7,500 for concept designs for 298 Norwich Wesley Road. $2,000 for the community conversation. And then the pending approval for the 100,000 for the small business assistance program.
okay. Thank you. That's a lot more than,
So the total, not including the 100,000, the total that has actually been approved is $270,185.20.
But the starting balance is correct.
this,
1,262,695,7404.
No, because you didn't include the community conversation, so you have to take 2,000 out of it.
okay.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I am in favor of the 7,500 for the fire department for their software out of the ARPA also. And I am not sure how I feel right now about using the 145 and change for this, for the expenses for this yet. I'm just want to understand. Those aren't going to go away anytime soon, right? I mean, we're going to hopefully, I think we're going to talk later about possibly shutting down utilities and portions of the
Yeah, so-
building and,
So they're not going to go away, but things can't stay the same. So all or part of the one-story wing will probably come down. We have somebody that's very serious about renting out the second floor as a early learning center of the second floor, the one-story wing, which will more than support that whole two-story wing. Rather.
the expense of that.
Yeah. So the expenses are going to drop quite a bit if they're 145 now next year. And there's going to be a cost to having a central office in this building. There's a cost of using this room. There's a cost of using municipal buildings. So it's either use this room for voting and for meetings or find somewhere else to have those. Also, if we wanted to tear the whole building down, we'd also have to find somewhere for the central office to go.
Yeah.
So there is, I mean, to keep this, just this center part of the building, if that's all that stayed, there would be a cost to the town to do that.
Yeah. I think that I'm just more in favor of putting that in the operational budget than I am in using ARPA funds.
I
This-
don't think we can do that, though. Go ahead.
So I just want to kind of give one point of clarification. So anything we're talking about for the demolition or for using it for the operational expenses of this building, technically the ARPA fund use would be recouping lost revenue. And then once you use it as lost revenue, there are specific things that you can use that lost revenue money for. So that's spending on government services. So the utilities for this building would fall under general government administration, staff and administrative facilities. And then the demolition of the building would fall under environmental remediation. So to answer about putting it into the current budget, we already have the current budget. So we would have to do an additional appropriation from the undesignated fund or a transfer from some other line item. And I don't know where we would have an additional $100,000 in the current budget. In the budget we're going to discuss later, we have identified a new line item to put future funds in. So Bob's just talking about the current fiscal year.
Okay, so that absolutely educates me more. So we're saying right now in the budget that we're working under, that there is not a line item for expenses for this building. Okay, then I understand. Moving forward, it has its own line item to operate expenses out of.
It does.
Okay.
You'll see that on there. I think we put $100,000.
Okay. All right, then I'm not opposed
Okay.
to that.
So we have time to come back because again, the town meeting is not going to be until March. We have time to get back in front of the Board of Finance. We could probably present this to them the same night we present a budget, which gives us a couple more meetings to go through this case something changes. I just wanted to bring it in front of you so we could work on it a bit. So if I hear this right, that the $1 million, we're all in favor of that. We're tabling at this point the Cultural Coalition to see if there's a better way to spend that money or to see what it is that they want to do. I know you said you're in favor of the fire company money, but I'm not opposed to listening to them explain it when they do their presentation to us.
Same.
The refrigerator's out. The after-school program, I just tied that in with the $1 million towards if we end up making a community center out of that cafeteria. And I think probably more discussion if we're going to use the 145 and change or 147, whatever is left, towards the expenses of this building. I think that when you're helping the taxpayer, especially in days like today, if you help the taxpayer, you are doing something that helps in mental health, because we all struggle with bills. So if that bill disappeared and we had the ability to make it disappear this year, it gives us like a free year going into next year where we have to be more involved in exactly what this building is going to cost us, what's going to disappear, and what we're going to lease out and use. So we can just table this discussion at this point and then bring it up at a future meeting prior to meeting with the Board of Finance. Once we do that, if the Board of Finance approves it, I would say whatever the packages that we've all agreed on, take the whole package to the town meeting rather than piecemeal and say that, okay, the town can vote on these, but these are under 20,000. We'll vote on those. Just, I say we put it together and let them hear the whole thing.
Bob, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, in listening to you list off what we've already given, for those residents in town that are concerned that the ARPA funds are not going towards what in their minds they think that it should. North Stonington is such a small town. We don't have a lot of our own and house a lot of our own social services. We've given money to all the area towns and the social services that are around to help our residents. I think that that's really important for residents to understand as we earmark almost $1 million for the demolition of.
No, I agree. And the two biggest chunks would be the business initiative,
Yes.
which is $100,000 plus the 5,000. Was it 5,000?
No,
The-
15.
15,000 for the
Hiring bonus.
hiring. And then the other money would be the money for the per diem, which keeps the town
Yes.
for the next 3 years
Safe, yep.
safe. So
And we do have time as well. So even if we had 150,000 left that we weren't sure about, we have time. Even the Cultural Coalition money, we have time to say, next year we can give it to you, or there's a other program being run by this group. My question though, Bob, is when we go to Board of Finance and then send it to a town meeting, I understand that you want it all voted on at the same, but I'm concerned that something small might get the whole thing voted down. Say it's, say it was something like the refrigerator in there, that somebody didn't want to use it for the refrigerator or the Cultural Coalition, and we send that forward, and now they vote down the whole package, including the $1 million.
well, we could break it up into multiple votes. I just want to bring it to the town meeting that night. So it doesn't have to be one number. We can, if you're saying, if there's 4 items, let's break it down to 4 different votes. I don't have a problem doing
Right.
that.
So one might go to a referendum, for instance,
It
if
could.
that's the case, and the other one might not.
I think that we should seek counsel from the town attorney on anything under $20,000. I don't know what kind of a precedent that sets if we bring something to town meeting that doesn't require town meeting approval. So I think we should just double check that before.
But then we have conflicting reports on that. The town attorney said one thing and the auditor said another.
The auditor said nothing needed to go to anyone.
Right.
So
I understand what you're saying. All right, but I think this is pretty much the end of the ARPA funding too. So hopefully we don't have to deal with this again somewhere down the road, because that means we didn't have a reason for ARPA funding. So, okay, is there anything else for this evening? If not, we can end this meeting, take a 2-minute break and come back to our other meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Motion
I'm gonna, do I hear a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting ended at 6:29. Okay, now we're going to call the regular meeting to order. This is the January 25th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Roll call is myself, Bob Carlson, first selectman, Selectwoman Nicole Porter, and Selectman Brett Mastriani. And as usual, we'll start this with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Okay, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? As you know, you can comment when we're talking about agenda items while we're talking about them. So non-agenda items.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I just got a couple of comments and kind of confused here. When I read the North Stonington Quarterly, it mentioned about the bill HB 6107. And I believe that people, some people might want smaller lot sizes, but if you read on in that thing, in that bill, it also talks about trailer zoning rules going out. Plus, I believe there's an option in there, at least that's what I read. I don't know if there was a time schedule when North Stonington could opt out of that bill. So I would encourage everybody to really read that over before we ask zoning or change our zoning on that. And the other thing was that the Hewitt property house that we went to, I understand it's grandfathered in, but I don't know what it means by being grandfathered in. I still think it's going to need permits, and anything done with that building should be looked at by the zoning officer. And that's my two
Okay.
comments.
So the first comment, I got to be honest with you, not familiar with that bill at this point. I'll look into it. So that's probably something I'll have to talk to the planning department about. You said it was in the quarterly?
Yeah, it was in the quarterly. The KNSA had it in there.
Okay, I'll look at that. And then the second thing was, yes, before we do anything with the 1750 John Dean Gallup House, we'll make sure that we cross the Ts and dot the Is with the building inspector and make sure we do the things the right way, Brian. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? That's in from Sean, Gary, any comment? No, okay. Okay, next, selectmen comments. This is when we let selectmen make comments right after the public makes comments. So
I have a comment.
perfect.
I just wanted to update the two of you that I met with Matt and Laura Tillinghast regarding the farmers market and Milltown Arts, and potentially doing some work together. I talked to them over the past 2 weeks. We had a meeting. I met with them last night. They are moving forward with trying to get a farmers market in town, starting with some pop-ups to start. They're looking at once a month, starting in May. And they're primarily looking at the Hewitt property to hold those. I reached out to the chair of the Hewitt Farm Committee, and I'm going to be going to their meeting on Monday to discuss it with them and go over the details of what they're looking for in use. I've also talked to Lou in Planning and Zoning, the chair of Planning and Zoning, to see how it would work, because Christine brought up that it's an R80 zone. The good thing is anything or most things agricultural related are allowed in any zone by our statute or by the zoning ordinances. So we'll know more on Monday, and then I'll probably have them come after Monday's meeting to see how that goes and talk to us as a group about it. But they're looking to get things started right away and move forward. So they're right now looking into the insurance aspects of it and things like that.
I'm totally in favor of using that property for something like that, but I can't remember whether it was a year ago. It was more than a year ago because it was before COVID. So a couple of years ago, I was on a small work group that was looking at a farmer's market in town. And what we were hearing, we did a study in all of the other farmers markets around the area, what days of the week they were on, so that we wouldn't overlap, but also we were having trouble getting vendors to commit to something that we would do here because they already have commitments in the other towns. So I am absolutely in favor. I think that property is perfect for something like that. And I think that being an agricultural town, we want something. I just am concerned that there's going to be enough support for it and that we're going to get enough people to be able to come if surrounding towns. I mean, there were like 8 or 9 of them on
Yeah.
different days.
So I gave Matt and Laura all that information. We went over it all because so there was the subcommittee of EDC
Yes.
and 2 other studies from EDC on that prior to those. So we had all that information. So they're looking at Sunday because that's the only one, there isn't one
That didn't have
around.
someplace else.
And he's gotten a lot of feedback from potential vendors already.
Good.
And that's the reason for the pop-up to start, to see
Yeah,
how it
to
goes.
See what kind of.
And to also show that there are a few planned, so people that sign up know that there's a few planned and they can go there. It might not attract some of the farms, the bigger farms that do some of the other farmers market because they are tied in. And, I went over the pros and cons that we found out through EDC regarding, certain people, farms have to make a certain amount to be
To
there
make it
all
work,
day.
yeah.
But some of these hobby farms or the smaller farms that aren't tied into the other farmers market, they don't have an outlet for some of their produce and meat. And we have a lot of those in North Stonington. So those are the ones that have been reaching out saying, look, I'd like to see how that goes and start the process. So that's why it's gung ho and they're moving forward to try to get it going in May.
Cool.
So there's May, I think it's May 15th. I'll get the dates to you, but there's May, June, and July dates that are set. And it'll come down to the Hewitt Farm saying, okay, and for ultimately the selectmen say on anything different than in the regulations for it. But the enthusiasm there, Matt runs Wildbriar Farms, the pastry. So, he talked about having his cookies there and that's it. So something different than they have at the farm stand. And then he's been approached by some of the honey producers in town. So there's some nice feedback and basically he doesn't want to lose that momentum from his initial offering. And then tying it in with the Milltown Arts, it's a nice step to get them moving and kind of gives you a reason to go to mix the two. So I think they came up with an artesian market is what they were going to call it. And Laura already had a logo drafted. So they're moving along. I wanted to give you guys the update because they are moving along so quickly. And we'll know more Monday and see how Hewitt Farm takes it. The chair was very positive about it. He actually expressed how he'd like to open up Hewitt Farm for more opportunities like this, and this is perfect. So we'll see how the rest of the committee feels.
The only comment I have is I think it's a positive thing for the town. I'm excited the fact that it's a private group that's going to be doing it, not the town. I think the town's role is just to make sure they do it within their ordinances and rules that we provide. But I'm all for it. I'm glad it's a private group that's interested in running this. Secondly, Brett, you mentioned you're going to be at the Hewitt Farm Committee meeting on Monday, and so was I planning on being there, but so we're not doing an illegal meeting. I will not comment on the farmer's market at that meeting. I'm there strictly to talk about the 1750 house. Okay.
You can discuss, it is a public meeting, notarized, so you can both be there, so we don't violate.
Right,
any
but
of
I
the
won't
rules.
discuss what you're discussing and
Okay.
I'll discuss the house. Thanks. Right. I want to get my goal is to go a whole term without any FOI violations. Okay, with that said, do you have anything, Nicole, for this evening?
No, well, yes, just wanted to comment on the email regarding the power grid. And what, if any, preparations we have looked into, how credible we think the possibility is. And just want to
So
know your thoughts.
which email was that? Was that the power grid that's up on 49 on the way to Stop and Shop on the right?
No, this was it was, iOS New England,
Okay,
giving
you're
us.
talking about the rolling blackouts?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I reached out to Representative Greg Howard. He's and also the COG. They're looking into how serious a matter this may be or not. At this point, we haven't had enough cold weather in long periods of time to drain the energy. So they're just sitting right now, it's a small chance that this is going to happen. They just want to give us all the heads up in the warning.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'll have Gary touch on it when he speaks.
Perfect.
Because he's been monitoring it, but it's serious, but not so serious that we all have to be getting everybody on alert and making people nervous about it.
Okay.
So Gary, if you want, when you come up for your time, or you want to just touch on that quickly, you could, on the rolling blackouts. Where we are with the rolling blackout situation. Wait till you come up here. Not yet. No, not yet. Not yet. Oh, hello. Okay.
And I had one other
Go
thing
ahead.
that I just wanted to clarify. I know that you sent an email to Greg Howard also about the marijuana retail and sale and growth and anything from that?
No, not yet. So what we're doing there is just making sure our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted. We as a town, if it gets approved that we can have a marijuana dispensary, grower, seller in our town, we can put a 3% additional tax on it. But that money, that 3%, as far as I hear, has to be earmarked towards certain things.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
And I just
things,
want to
I
make
thought.
sure that I don't want the town to feel like if this is a $40 million enterprise and we can get 1.2 million a year, that 1.2 million, I want to make sure that we can use it for what the town needs to use it for. It doesn't do us any good if we have to use it for things that aren't in this town. You know,
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get clarification, because before we go to the town, right now, I don't know if you know, but I think it's the third planning and zoning's meeting on February 3rd to talk about their moratorium. They're going to have a public hearing in February, sometime in February. Then we'll go to a 6-month moratorium where we can rewrite the regulations as far as marijuana growth and sell. So we just want to make sure that when we go back to the public, to the town of North Stonington, and say, hey, this is our options. I don't want the town to think, hey, we can get a $1.2 million per year windfall if we can only use it in certain areas. So that's the clarification I'm trying to get.
Okay.
I just wanted to touch base on that since we can discuss it. And maybe get more, I know you're working on more clarification, but the email concerned me a little bit about some of the numbers that they were throwing out. And when I read the state statute on it, so this person's not interested on the retail end of it, but the 3% is on the retail side of things. It's not, it actually talks about, I didn't bring it in front of me, but it talks about, I brought it up to Christine and I sent it. If it's transferred to another entity, another retailer, another facility, then even though it's grown here or produced here, there's no revenue based on that. So that 3%. So if this person is selling to another retailer to retail it, or if they have another facility, other places that they're doing retail, then we don't get that 3%.
That's correct.
So that's why that email concerned me, and it doesn't make sense according to the state.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know why he said, because originally in the original meeting, he did want to retail. He's got the perfect location to retail. So I think he's just trying to move the needle forward quicker. And we're telling them, no, we're going to put the brakes on and do it right. We're not going to be forced it, because we don't have to be forced into doing this. So
Right.
it's if he does wholesaling, that counts as sales. So the 3% could go on wholesaling.
Not according to the.
If he's selling it, yes. If he's transferring to one of his locations, no.
Yeah, I would read that again, because it talks about not only his location, but to another retailer.
Okay, well,
And there's,
we'll make sure that we get all the information before we put this out.
yeah, because I'm sure we're gonna come up with a program for full vetting, so it's not just the first guy that reached out to us,
Oh, exactly.
we're buying into.
All the
So,
towns are looking at it now. Almost all the surrounding towns around us are moratoriums or.
you have to get the rules. Are you going to the meeting? Planning zoning, because I talked to Lou, I know he won't be there. and
Yeah, I'll be there on
Okay.
February 3rd.
Oh, great.
Thanks. Okay. If there's nothing else from the selectmen, first selectmen's comments. One is I sent you in the packet, CT Location Act, Relocation Act. The only reason this came about was there was a story in a situation in town. We had an older gentleman, I won't mention names, the older gentleman, ex-service, was living in a condition that wasn't the greatest condition. And we were trying to find him housing, and we're working with Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center and through other entities like the VA. I was in contact with the Attorney General's office on multiple occasions, and seems like now we might have an opportunity to get him somewhere. However, while we were going through this process, we found out, and I was told about this Uniform Relocation Act of Connecticut. The thought was his living condition may have been condemned. If it was condemned, so here's what it says basically in a nutshell. If we decide to put a road through, take property for town use, or through ordinances or zone or codes, we condemn a place, we are then responsible for housing for this individual. If this residence would have been condemned, then it would have been up to the town to give this person residence for a certain amount of time while he was looking for a new location to live. I hadn't talked to the attorney yet to see what we were, was there a limit? Was it 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year, or forever? I mean, how long do we have to pay to have this individual put up, even though it was a town that took away his place to live? So I haven't got that answered yet. However, and the good thing is that the housing we hopefully found, and it wasn't me, and we worked on it, but there was another individual involved. The housing they found for this gentleman, the town does not have to put up any funds for it. So it turned out to be something that we probably don't have to act on right now, but I want you to know that if this ever came up again, that the town would be responsible. And I want just, it was mostly an educational piece to bring it to your attention. There used to be a line in the budget. I think it was called the welfare line. We haven't budgeted it in a while. When you see the budget later tonight, I think it might be a possibility we throw a small amount of money in that line just in case something like this did pop up. Any comment on that before I move forward? If not, next, shut down the 298 wing. We heard a lot of talk at the community conversation about shutting down this wing. I met with SCWA, which is the Southern Connecticut Water Authority. He was in Brandon was in my office. We're going through the maps. I was able to find maps in the safe of where the water came in the 2000, I think it was 2007 or 2008 water line that went through Main Street. And the water comes in off Main Street, not far from, if you know where Frank Eppinger's house is, but you're coming in from where Chucky's was. Frank's the first house on the right, but a little farther right there is where the main is that comes off of Main Street goes under the baseball field, by the basketball court, and comes into the cafeteria area, into the boiler room. At that point, one part goes over to the Wheel Library. So all the water for Wheel Library goes through our cafeteria piping, and it comes to the rest of this campus. So it goes from the one-story wing cafeteria up this wing, down the central office, by this room, into the two-story wing. So what does that mean? Well, if you shut down that building, you basically have shut down water through the rest of the campus. There'd be no water here for bathrooms. There'd be no water at the Wheel Library. They don't use a lot of water, but there'd be no water there. There is an opportunity, and I spoke to them about this. They could tap into Main Street themselves in the near future. It wouldn't cost them much money to tap in. It would be just what it would cost to dig the trench and to tie in at the library. I'm guessing $5,000 or less. So that might be an opportunity for them to do that down the road, especially to see what we end up doing with the one-story wing as far as demolition. Because if we demo the whole thing, we're going to have to find another way to reroute that water. Either we come off Route 2 or we come off Main Street into this building, and then the library would be on their own. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that we can't, because of that water source coming through that part of the building, it's almost virtually impossible to shut down the one-story wing just cold turkey without upsetting the rest of this campus.
So I'm assuming when we put it out to bid, that would be made known to anybody putting in a bid, and that would have to be included, because we certainly can't operate this half of the building without water. So
Correct.
that would need to be part of whatever estimate they came up with for the demolition.
Right, it'd be part of the RFP to demo and then restore.
Okay.
So there's two parts to this demolition, is whether we demo the whole one-story wing or a portion. When we demo it, whatever we restore back to this part of the building. And if we tell Real Library they're on their own for their water, which they can, because they got a tie-in right in front of the library. But all that as far as electrical, plumbing, heating, all that has to be part of the RFP on how to keep this building now. Since all that comes from the part we want to tear down, we have to restore and make it come into this building directly. Yes, that'd be part of it. Any,
Can I raise my hand?
Gary?
Yep. You there?
Yes.
And I don't know if I can comment or not, but
You can.
it is in the deeds that the school provides water to the library. So, because when the school was originally constructed, it went on top of the water plant that supplied the library. So I get the desire to reroute to support what the town wants to do, but are they going to change the deeds to relax that too?
I'm not saying that would be the case, Gary. So I spoke to the library to tell them what the alternative would be. I talked to Amy Kennedy about it, not the library board, just to give her a heads up. I don't think the town would ever force that issue. They use so little water, wouldn't be a reason to force that issue, to be honest with you. If we end up keeping the cafeteria area in the one-story wing, we don't have to do a thing because it's already piped over there from that. That wouldn't be disturbed. But if we tear the whole one-story wing down, then we have to make provisions to do something differently. So even if it's a matter of that, if you're saying we're going to provide water, maybe the town says then you tie into the tie-in that's in front of the library and send us the water bill. I mean, it's not a big bill. They have 2 bathrooms, I believe, and they're hardly ever used. So I don't think that's an issue. I don't think we'd say to the library, you're on your own, just without having discussion.
No. I would caution, it's within their rights to say, do whatever you want, but this is on you. The deeds say so. So the town might have to pay for the tie-in and the water bill. Just recognize that. I'll go back on mute.
Thank you for your comment. Good point. Thank you. Okay, any other comments on this before we go to the next thing, which is probably going to be a little more contentious? Okay. Right.
So if we're moving forward with going to a town meeting and potential demo, what was the time frame in being able to shut it down for expenses? Was there one? If we're waiting for demo?
No. Oh, waiting for demo? We still have to reroute the water before then. So we'd have to bring, depending on what part, how much demos are going to be done, the water has to be rerouted before we do the demolition. If we don't, we shut down, not only we shut down the school, we shut down Main Street. And from what SCWA says, we might be shutting down the schools across the street.
Okay.
And what about the electricity and the heat in that building? If we're, again,
The heat for this area is coming from this building. So the furnaces for this area, come from the 2-story wing. Electricity comes from this building.
so have we already shut down to the lowest that we can go without causing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so the heat's on as low as it can go without, it's not the most efficient heating system.
Yeah.
But it's as low as it can go without the pipes freezing.
okay.
Okay. Last thing on this section, transfer station fees. This is going to be sure there'll be a lot of people who'd like to have input into this discussion. So we're starting to talk about the budget, and we as selectmen have an obligation to the town to look at ways the town can save money, look at ways the town can get income. And as transfer station is one area that when we look at it, there's going to be some big dollars coming up. If you took the tour of the transfer station, which I think Nicole did, were you on that one, Brett? No, I think Brian Rathburn came on it. So we know we're looking at somewhere down the road, a pretty big number to close up the bulky waste area. Some people say it's 10 years from now, it could be 15 years from now. The numbers seem to fluctuate, but we know it's a big number. And doing a comparison, which I gave you in your packet of the nearby transfer stations, we see that we are by far the least expensive and open the most. The neighboring transfer stations open a few times during the course of a week, and they charge for everything. We are just throwing some things together, some possible numbers that we talked about prior. When I did give you in the packet, this is the current fees, and building demolition materials that's what bulky waste is. So we thought of how can we do this without really hurting the taxpayer too much? We hear this is just another form of tax, and I get that. We also hear seniors are on a fixed income, and I get that. So I thought that maybe a 2-year sticker, so we'd have a sticker would change every 2 years. It would be $40, but that would be $20 per year. So 2-year sticker for $40. If you got the sticker during the first 6 months of the first year, it'd be $40. The second 6 months of the first year, it'd be $30. The first 6 months of the next year would be $20, and the last 6 months of the last year would be $10. The reason being is we want all the stickers to end at the same time. It doesn't make any sense to have stickers change color if you're constantly changing the stickers. So each program would start, say this started July 31st, July 1st. Anyone bought a sticker from July 1st to December 31st would pay $40 good for 2 years. If you move into town in January, you buy a sticker for 2 years, which is really going to be a year and a half, it's a $30 sticker. Also, we talked about when we walked around the transfer station, it was brought up about senior discount. We thought dropping the fee from $40 to $30 for seniors made sense. If we did that, a $40 sticker for 2 years comes up to $1.67 per month. If you do a $30 sticker for 2 years, it's $1.25 per month. It's not very expensive, and we'd probably bring into the towns. We guesstimated in talking with Donnie and the number of people that have stickers and trying to guess when they would buy them, somewhere around $30,000 income for the.
Oh, I thought it would be more.
It's just the stickers. It's not bulky waste, it's just the stickers. Well, we could go more, we could go higher, but we're trying not to gouge the taxpayer. Then we'd have a small, large, and oversized bulky waste fee, maybe be something like $25, $50, $25, $75, and $100, depending on what kind of a program we come up with. Most towns around us have that, a small, medium, large, extra large truck fee rather than having scales. And we're hoping that would generate enough money to pay for the money that's in. We're budgeting now $25,000 a year to get us ready to be prepared to close the bulky waste 10 or 15 years from now. So we don't have to go from scratch. We're hoping that the bulky waste fees will offset the money that's in the budget that we're putting aside. So I'm looking for comment on those things.
Bob, I think coming up with a sticker program is good. I know we talked about it during campaign season when we were out there at the transfer station. And I know, Nicole, you had a run-in at the transfer station too when you were there. And we did notice a lot of out-of-town vehicles coming in, or vehicles without stickers dumping. So I think ultimately, not only would we get a little revenue from the stickers, but we would also reduce our costs on out-of-town waste coming in. I guess some of my questions would be how, if you talk to Donnie, how will we police this? So we do have a sticker program technically in place now, but they're not enforced. So we don't enforce the stickers on a regular basis. I know if it's blatant, something they'll go up and ask, but there's nobody monitoring every car that comes in to make sure they have valid stickers. So I think those are all the things that would have to be worked out. Do you know how many stickers were purchased that first go around years ago that we ended up having to pay back? I'm wondering how many people bought them back then.
Maybe Sean knows the answer to that question.
Sean, do you happen to remember? All right. Because I know it didn't go over well, but that was much higher dollar value. And I think if the residents understand that it's needed and also would reduce our costs in there, I think it's all in how we present it and we get buy-in from the residents. But I do think something has to happen there. Just standing there all day for a few days, I saw it with my own eyes of how much waste there is there. No pun intended, but it's our tax dollars, it's every resident's tax dollars that are being wasted on people that don't have the right to be dumping there. So I think this not only generates some revenue, but it also limits those out of towners from coming in.
The other thing is, I know like Stonington has a bag program. I can't see doing something that extreme. It just costs us so much money, it costs the taxpayer so much additional money. And as far as, yes, we'd have to police it. Obviously, we maybe got away from that a bit. That needs to be policed. We thought that if someone came in the first time and they said, hey, I don't have the money. Okay, so they would, the first time they get to be free, but they would mark on the book that they came in once. They would, next time they came, they would have to get a sticker, or they get to pay the $10 one-day fee, which would be ridiculous because that's worth 6 months worth of visits, or they'd be turned away. But yeah, policing would have to be a big part of it. Agreed. And I talked to Donahue, he understands that. What nice thing is he went to the transfer station and met with Will and Donna and I can't think who else was up there, but he actually met with the people in the field and said, hey, how will this work? Do you see any issues? And they actually contributed to the concept that we've come up with here. So this wasn't done by myself or me and Christine sitting in a room coming up with Donnie involved the people in the field and they were behind it. So they understand it.
Yeah, and I think the costs are just going to continue to go up. I mean, I worked in waste management for 3 years and every year our tipping fees went up. Every year, everything went up. When I look at the bulky waste fees that you talk about on that second page of what you presented, it says must have a building permit. Now, I know that did come up that, there used to be a program where they can look online or on the computer to see if there was building permits. But what level does that get to? So if someone's taking down a small shed or something like that and they have bulky waste, they might not have a building permit for that. So
No,
is
but
there a threshold for that?
Well, if they're a resident, they just pay by the truckload, small, medium, and large truckload, right? If it's someone that doesn't have a sticker, they'd have to have a building permit showing that they're working in town.
Okay, so that building permit must have a building permit for out of,
The building permit has to be a job that's going in within the town.
We need to confirm that with Donnie because I think that was for everything. So we need to double check that.
well, I mean, we could implement.
But if I'm taking down a
Whatever.
tree fort, why would I need a building permit?
We need to confirm with
I
Donnie
will
what
confirm that.
his plan was.
I'd be on board if that was the case.
If what was the case?
If the building permit is for out of town vehicles, I think it's a slippery slope unless it's truckload after truckload, but we'd have to come up with some kind of guidance on that.
So an out-of-town person building a house in North Stonington paying by the truckload, showing a building permit that material is coming from town.
Right.
That's we'll talk to Donnie about that. But that would make sense to me because why would,
Or maybe it's something like a small truckload doesn't require a building permit, but a large or an extra large does, because if someone's bringing that much, they should have a building permit for what they're doing.
Well, the day we were there, we saw the same truck coming 4 times during the day, dropping off. And it wasn't even they didn't have a sticker. So those are the things that make you nervous. But I would love to hear somebody like Brian comment on this one. Because I mean.
Brian was at he was at the transfer station with
Mhm.
us that day.
Yeah, well, he's online. I'm wondering if he has anything to say about this because, he was a strong
Carl does.
person against it the last time. And those are the people that we need to hear from.
Oh,
Gary's got his hand up.
Gary, go ahead.
So, it's not just building demolition that goes into bulky waste. It's furniture, it's ceiling tiles, it's things that aren't refuse that can go to the incinerator. So tying it to a building permit just seems a little bit of a stretch.
well, we have other places for furniture, Gary. So I don't think furniture goes in there, but yes, ceiling tiles would. But
Absolutely not true. If you've ever tried to get rid of certain kinds of furniture, Donna is right there to tell you where to put it. And so being a person that's cleaned out a house recently, a lot of stuff goes to bulky waste that you would never pull a building permit for. So tying the two together doesn't make any sense to me.
Gary,
Thank
there's
you.
a separate fee for the furniture, so I think that's why it's not, it wouldn't be included in that category.
Now, the furniture that you're talking about are the things that Donna has to take apart, the upholstered furniture. But if you got a press board cupboard, it doesn't go in the transfer station bin, it goes to bulky waste. If it's got upholstery and springs, then Donna gets a fee to take it apart. I'm telling you, for those of us that use the dump, there's a secret sauce here to get rid of your stuff. Just be careful of this, Bob.
Just to add one other thing, because I know this is touches close to your heart. We also thinking about putting a Sunday, 3-hour Sunday dump run in. So maybe a 9 to 12 on Sundays, one Sunday a month.
That'd be worth paying for.
I know that would excite you. So we're thinking possibly the first Sunday of every month from 9 to 12, do a transfer station opening.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to give you a little comment on it. I think the biggest problem up there is the bulky waste. And just like Gary said, you can put wooden chairs in there. You can do everything that has nothing to do with a housing permit. I think it's probably time we had scales up there. I understand they're not usable at this point. I think that's the only fair way to do a bulky waste thing, because even with a small truck or a big truck, you can pack a lot in a small truck. And the other thing, if you're going to charge $40, you can take it off my taxes, because I'm paying a lot of money for taxes, and I think that landfill is included. So you can just take that off my taxes that I pay every year. That's basically my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Sean?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Brian as far as the household, the regular garbage and so forth. I think that is already covered in our taxes. We may not be policing that enough now, having a sticker, but the same would occur whether we have a sticker now, whether you pay for it or not. The policing is the same issue whether you're charging for the sticker. I would be in favor of just looking at charges for different size vehicles on bulky waste. And yeah, I've watched trucks from contractors. Maybe the contractor lives in town, but he's not doing all the work in the town, and that we're getting refuse from all kinds of other jobs. So we do want to extend the life of bulky waste area. So it's one way to, put a fee that's equal to other towns, so that it doesn't come to North Stonington because we have a cheaper fee than Groton or whatever. So I think it should, bulky waste fees should parallel other towns. But Brian's right. Our taxes pay for it, and if the fees go up with scare or whatever, the tipping fees, then the budget goes up. There's no need to set up a separate, a new charge. We went through this before.
So how do you answer the fact that everyone pays taxes for the transfer station, but not everybody uses it, number one? And second, how do you explain that we're the only town around here that has no sticker fee?
Well, I'm not totally against, as you know, I was in Selectmen when we instituted the fee. I learned that that's not acceptable in the town to the taxpayers to be charging for something that they're already getting in their taxes.
Okay.
I think you could sell the bulky waste fee, because you could show that there's an issue with extending the life of our transfer station and the need for doing that. And along those lines, I don't know whether you know, has the transfer station been surveyed lately? That's something that's actually required by, I think it's required by DEP, but it should be surveyed on a regular basis so you can track the life of it.
The surveying is no longer required as part of the DEP permit. It is on our plan to get the surveyor out. We contacted him at the beginning of COVID. He was supposed to come, he didn't come, so it is on our list to get done this spring so that we do have that for the records, but it is not required for our permit.
Yeah, it would be beneficial so we know how long we have, because we do have to figure out how we're going to handle that in the future. But, and I know how that is. I had for the 2 years I was in office, we couldn't get, I don't know if it's the same guy. That's the problem. We need to find another person to do those surveys because that guy is not responsive.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
So Bob, is there an estimate on what the bulky fees generated would be? Is there any way to predict
He
that?
hasn't done that. He's working on it.
Okay. And then I guess to Brian's point, I understand it's in your taxes. It's in everybody's taxes in the other towns as well. And that's not an excuse, but when Bob brought up a few hours on Sunday, because that would benefit quite a few people in town that used to utilize it on Sunday. Can you see if Brian, if you're still on here, I have a question for you to see if that would be something that you see benefit in, and is that worth paying a little more to be able to utilize the Sunday option? Go ahead, Brian.
I don't know about the Sunday thing. I think the how it's open now is nice. Sunday would be another convenient thing, but you're going to be paying because the town crew is a union crew. You're going to be paying a lot of extra money. You know, that would it be come down to. I know a lot of people like to go there on Sunday because they work all week. A lot of your senior citizens I see there on Thursdays because, you know, we're not working all week. And it's convenient for us. We don't have to deal with a lot of crowds. I mean, I've been up there on a Sunday before when it was open, and gosh, sometimes you're waiting in the street, you know, because you got so many residents that want to use it that day. Well, they'll have to plan for either Saturday or one of the other days somehow. But I'm not against the Sunday, but it's going to cost more, and that's what we're trying to do is keep the costs down. So that's the only thing I can think of right away. But I'll do more thinking on it, Brett. Believe me.
All right, I'd appreciate it if you did.
Thank you.
I am also interested in seeing if Donnie can cost out the fee for the bulky waste, and seeing what that would end up getting us. I'll have to say at the very beginning of the conversation, I was like, this is like a no-brainer, like $40 for 2 years in comparison to what other towns are paying. To me, it was like, absolutely. But I get, and I do hear Brian and people like Brian are saying, you know, geez, our taxes are what they are in town, and what services do we really get for those taxes? So I'd love to be able to give them something to say, oh yeah, no, we don't have to. And I do think we would capture the majority of people that are dumping stuff that are not residents. I think that we would get them more with bulky waste. Let them come from Preston now if they're going to dump and pay for their bulky waste. I know that it made me very nervous to hear the estimate and the fact that we're just 10 years away, potentially 10 to 15 years away of having to do something with that humongous bulky waste mountain. And then like that cost was staggering of what it might take to deal with that and cover it over and do everything according to regulations. So we need to start putting something away, because in 10 years from now, when we have to go in front of the town and say we need $1 million to cover this entire bulky waste mountain, I think we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and I'm on board with Nicole saying it'd be nice to get that estimate of that bulky waste,
Yeah.
because, you know, when you think about it, if that could generate and reduce the cost of people coming in, but generate enough money to say we don't need a sticker fee. But I do think that we should implement the stickers according to your guidelines here, and they change out every year or every 2 years, whether we have a fee or not, whether that comes out of this or not. I think it's something that we need to do, and we need to have some kind of enforcement program in place. And I know initially that might cost the town a little money to have someone there to help, whether it's someone different that helps monitor it when there's only 2 people on or 3 people on. But ultimately, that should save us money down the line of having those people weeded out that don't belong there.
Okay, good discussion. I think we'll table this for now.
You
I'm
you
sure-
have online hands from 3
Oh,
people.
we do.
So Joe Gross, go ahead. Joe, you have to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, go ahead.
I believe everything that you heard comments up there, I have to agree with. I believe it's one of the few services I get as a taxpayer. I believe our problem that we have, and I don't know exactly how you will, but the bulky waste. If I go to bulky waste and I bring a chair up there and I got springs in it, I either remove the springs or I pay $10. That's in effect now. I think the biggest problem we have, and we've had it since we've had the area, is our nice friendly fellow people who live in town who do take out of town bulky waste stuff and bring it in here because it don't cost them anything. I think that's the big part you gotta hit, is how do we eliminate that from happening? You have some small contractors in town that I know do a lot of jobs out of town and that, and then once a week or once a month, they go to bulky waste and that's it. And you can see their trucks when they're loaded, so that's the biggest problem I think we have up there. And I believe my taxes right now pay for it, and I cannot see raising any taxes any further up there than whatever we do for bulky waste. Thank you, guys.
Harry and Nino, go ahead.
Yeah, I can wait till after Kathy goes if you prefer. I've spoken once already. Let Kathy go and I'll go last.
Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. First of all, like I've heard everyone speak, and I'm one of those ones that look at our taxes, and I don't want our taxes go up. But when I've been to the meetings, and I've been one projecting, like when we look to the future, and when we have to cap when we finally have to say it's in 10 years, cap it off. Do we have any money sitting there for that right now in our budget, first of all? And does any of the money that comes in from the dump, say people are paying to drop some of the furniture off, does any of that go toward that right now in the budget? Or does that just go to the recycle, like just in a budget for something else for that area? Because I'm looking at it and this is, do I want to pay $40 for 2 years? No, I don't. But then on the other hand, yes, I do, because I'd rather be hit now with these fees than 10 years from now. And then all of a sudden we're having a budget discussion. There's no money sitting there to prepare us for this future, for a big lump sum that eventually is going to have to happen. And if we have people from out of town coming in and dumping more and more in our bulky waste, then that 10 years, sooner or later, could be even, I'm just saying, it could lessen the 10 years that we have to cap it, and could be in 5 years. You don't know, because we're letting people from out of town come in and we're not charging them either. So I'm looking at it long term. So for me, I rather pay the fee so it's going into the budget for when that time comes. And that's how I'm logically looking at it. But I do want to know, do we have anything in the budget right now or money going into that for that when that time comes. Thank you.
Kathy, it's Christine. No, right now there is nothing in the budget. The past few years during budget time, we've talked about establishing a capital line for saving for the future closure. That's been eliminated every time. So that's why this board is looking at putting in these fees to offset that increase. Right now, any revenue that's brought in for disposal of anything at the transfer station just goes back towards all the revenue for the town. So we would have to create that capital line item so that money could sit in there until it's spent instead of just being a 1-year expenditure like everything else in the operating.
Okay, so that brings me back to when I voiced my opinion about, when we look at the budget and stuff, and I'm one, again, I will say, I don't want my taxes going up, but if we start planning and we start budgeting properly, like I rather pay $40 for 2 years for every 2 years and start charging people and putting that money away, knowing hopefully that's where it goes. Because what is the cost to cap? I know it was a outrageous number, but do we know around what the number was told to us? I can't remember to cap it.
We heard numbers anywhere from 1 million to 1.5 million. It was just a guess on Donnie's part.
Okay.
We would have to get that information for you,
A
Kathy.
scary number, Kath.
Yeah, that I thought it was really high, but I couldn't remember. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for me, that was good for me to hear Kathy's comment, because to Christine's point, when we try to put things in the budget in the past and it comes down to budget season and everybody needs to have it cut down, those are the first things that are going, and it's leaving us in a situation in 10 years where we're going to have this huge bill. So I think Kathy's just swayed me a little bit more
Well,
to a fee.
we'll have multiple discussions on this, I'm sure, but thank you. All right, is Gary still got his hand up? I can't see that. But
Yeah, just real quick, I want to thank Nicole for recognizing that the town doesn't have a lot of services, and this is a benefit of the taxpayers. That's very true. Bob, you mentioned, why are we the only town around that doesn't charge a sticker fee? Before we start comparing ourselves to other town on sticker fees, we ought to really understand what level of service the taxpayers are getting there versus what we get. They may have other funding needs that they're accomplishing. I can be swayed on the sticker fee for bulky waste, but I would like to know that it goes to a bona fide account that can't be taken for some other town need. So if we all get our sticker fee and it goes in there and we're in there for 10 years, if we have some budget gap, I wouldn't want to see it get absorbed by some other need from the general fund. And I do think we need to be a little bit more judicious about town generated refuse only. There are a lot of out of state and out of town cars up there. And I know there are people that have cars in that are registered or in other states because they got vacation homes and stuff, but that means the tax for that vehicle that they're dropping the stuff off with is getting paid to that other state or other locale, and that's just wrong. Thank you for letting me speak.
thank you, Gary. Okay, so why don't we, if there's no other hands, why don't we end this conversation now? I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. We'll get some information from Donnie on bulky waste fees. We'll get a more serious number on what we think it'll cost 10 to 15 years from now to cap the whole thing. We'll come up with what we can get from income by charging bulky waste fees. And if we can take that as revenue and offset a line item, if we're putting $25,000 a year towards the bulky waste capping, maybe if we can get $25,000 a year in bulky waste fees, they'll offset each other in the budget. So, and I agree with Gary. If we bring in money for this reason, it shouldn't be going to something else. So,
And Bob, I just want to say, I think it's important to know that to the public that you're looking at this and we're working on this to try to keep the services that the town provides consistent and keep them going. If you look at some of these other towns that do have sticker fees and charge more, I mean, you're looking at Griswold, they're open 1 day a week. And then they're open 2 days a week, the first and third week. So I think people need to also realize what they are getting, because the same people that understand it's in our taxes, if for some reason the expenses keep going up, and now we're cut down to 2 days a week or 1 day a week to have our transfer station open. People need to understand that's why we're working on this, and that's why you're putting a lot of time into this, is to make sure the residents get the services they want and need. And we're not just saying, you know what, we're cutting it down to one day a week like the other towns. I think it's important for everyone to realize that you're trying to find solutions for what's happening.
I agree. We want people to know there's a listening board. We listen to what people have to say, and we might come to the table with an idea that we think would be, it's a smart thing to do. And we can be talked out of it by the taxpayer. If they feel they want to go in a different direction, then that's what we're here for, is to do what the taxpayer tells us that they want us to do. So thank you. Why don't we move along now to old business? Gary's been here for a while, and I'm anxious to hear his update on all things COVID, rolling blackouts, and whatever else he'd like to talk about. Gary Barron, who is our EMD. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Good evening, everyone. Bob asked me to speak with everyone today about the EMD's responsibilities and a little bit about the job, what I've been doing, and also a little bit about my background. The EMD's responsibilities include developing, organizing, directing, and coordinating the town's emergency management program, with the goal of saving lives and protecting property by maintaining emergency operational capabilities that mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from any emergency or disaster. Connecticut has a total of 5 EMD regions. North Stonington is in Region 4. Our Region 4 extends from the Massachusetts state border over to roughly west in Colchester, down south to the ocean, and out east to the Rhode Island border. It contains 45 municipalities. Every municipality or town has an EMD. But a lot of people probably don't realize this, but the EMD is a link to town government. It's a link to the first selectman. The chain of command goes from the first selectman to me, myself, to our Region 4 EMD, which would be Mike Caplet. And from Mike Caplet, it goes to Hartford at the state level. From the state level, if the problem is really too big to fix, they'll go to the federal government for assistance and supplies. The EMD is appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the municipal chief executive officer, in this case, the first selectman. I have served as EMD under 4 first selectmen. The EMD advises the CEO on all emergency management matters, and related laws, rules, regulations, and authorities originate from Title 28 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The municipal CEO and EMD are the town's 2 sworn officers at the state level. You can think of everything the EMD does is coordinated, reviewed, and approved with the first selectman during all emergency or otherwise exigent situations that affect our town. Bob asked that I cover a little bit about my background. I started my career in the Marine Corps with 2 combat tours in Vietnam. I served and lived in Africa, Asia, and Near East, South and Central America, and the Middle East. I'm bilingual. Therefore, I went through graduate school on a GI Bill. I was recruited by the Central Intelligence Agency and retired after 30 years in 2000 as a senior staff executive officer serving under the Director of Central Intelligence. I was recognized expert in counterterrorism, counterespionage, counterintelligence, counterinsurgency, physical security, personal and personnel security, and foreign agent operations. I was also assigned to the FBI as the CIA's liaison officer on various operations. I have worked and traveled to virtually every foreign country. I was a general partner in an LLC that operated internationally. Upon retirement as a special security agent, I was subsequently hired by the Mashantucket Tribal Nations Inspector General, which is how I ended up in Connecticut, actually, after retirement. As their senior investigator for 5 years, conducting a myriad of cases. Upon relocating to Connecticut, I have served as the vice president and president of the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company, and am presently an active member of the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company and I serve as a police lieutenant, fire police lieutenant. I have served as North Stonington's deputy EMD and the EMD for the last 9 years. Since November of 2021, the EMD's duties and activities have been mostly focused upon the ever-changing landscape of the COVID issue, as well as weather-related issues, which are always of concern. I also serve as a North Stonington's COVID enforcement officer for Connecticut State. At the beginning of COVID, PPE supplies as personal protection equipment supplies were virtually impossible to obtain, and counterfeited items existed. Even first responders couldn't obtain supplies, and they remain the most likely to be infected, even today. I dispersed touchless thermometers, sanitizers, and masks to most North Stonington businesses, our schools, and emergency services. I retrieved deliveries of PPE supplies from either Mohegan Sun or the New London Fire Department as our points of disbursement, or pods, as the acronym is. On 3 and 9 January, Bob, Brett, Trooper First Class McCarthy, and Stephanie distributed these kits to qualified North Stonington residents, and we quickly ran out of kits. Since then, the supply of test kits became available, and I retrieved another requisition from Mohegan Sun pod on 21 January, but again, at reduced numbers. No matter what we asked for, we were cut down about half on everything. As EMD, I review and approve the school's all hazards plan and update the EMD's local emergency operations plan. I also conduct several active shooter and fire drills at the schools. In fact, our resident trooper and myself will conduct an active shooter drill at our high school this Friday. We are also planning an active shooter exercise in February, consisting of several Connecticut State Police troopers. I frequently consult with school officials regarding personal and physical security safety issues. As EMD, I meet with and discuss emergency preparedness with the parent teachers organization and students, and I post frequent emergency preparedness reminders on the North Stonington Town website and other social media. I also post almost daily weather reports to critical North Stonington officers and the North Stonington school superintendent, which everyone's probably getting really tired of reading, but they change frequently. So you do, don't you? I also receive periodic intelligence reports from the Connecticut State Police and disseminate them accordingly, which you just got one today, which I won't go into here because I think it's restricted. Well, Mother Nature doesn't care about COVID, and we've had several weather-related issues to contend with, whether it's snow, ice, wind, or water. Our biggest concern is always the loss of power to our residents, especially if it occurs during cold weather. If warranted, the first selectman and the EMD will activate our emergency operations center at the CES building. Now, this can occur in various phases. If the first selectman decides, it could be just he and I, it could be the full complement of people in the CES, which would be the first selectman, the EMD, superintendent of highways, Donnie would be the our resident trooper, Jay McCarthy. It would be Ledge Light. It would be Peter Nero, the superintendent, Jim Russell, the IT person, and I'm probably forgetting a couple people. The fire chief, of course, the ambulance president also. But realistically, when we have an emergency situation, these people are out on the road taking care of business. So we're not going to drag them in off the road to occupy the CES when we can be right with them on the phone very quickly on radios. So it's more advantageous to have them in the field doing what they're supposed to be doing, taking care of business. And it gets very busy very quickly. But all those people I just named officially comprise the Emergency Operations Center. The EMD is a primary contact point with Eversource when we lose power in North Stonington. At these times, I'm in constant contact with my Eversource liaison. When power is lost caused by downed trees, snap poles, transformers, and blocked roads, I visit these sites and assess the damage and report to Eversource and assign a priority rating. There's 3 ratings that Eversource goes by. It's priority 1 means there's imminent loss of life involved. Priority 2 means that it could happen, that it needs to be fixed. Probably the preponderance of our calls are priority 2. Priority 3 is no hurry, not a big deal, but when you can get to it, get to it. And sometimes there's inconsistency with what Eversource calls a priority 1 and what our rescue personnel, fire and ambulance calls a priority 1, because if they cannot get down a one way in, one way out blocked road, and there's a residence down there and there's wires across the road, to the fire chief, that may be a priority 1 because their vehicles are blocked. To Eversource, that's not imminent life involved. So there's always a kind of a conflict on whose definition are we going to use. During these emergencies, I also maintain contact with DEMIS. That's an acronym for Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. That's who I come under, actually. Region 4 EMD, and maintain and update the Web EOC database. The Web EOC database is primarily used by many organizations throughout the state. It is the primary means of recording everything during an emergency. What roads are blocked? Are there any critical structures involved? How many people, fatalities do you have? How many people are injured? Everything is logged on there. Red Cross has access to it. State Police has access. Region 4 has access. Hartford has access. A lot of people have access to it, and it's where they can go into one database and see everything what's happening. How many outages on power and so forth and so on. I have to say also the personnel involved in emergency operations in North Stonington have an excellent working relationship, whether that's Region 4, DEMIS, the fire company, the ambulance, the highway department, all resident troopers, first selectmen, everyone at town hall. I firmly believe that North Stonington has a very dedicated and competent support team in place. Bob, you wanted me to cover rolling blackouts?
Just, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking not at this point, because why don't we get some more information on that first?
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
Okay. But there's 2 reasons why I wanted you to come. First of all, I wanted, because the meeting's recorded, I wanted the town to understand how lucky we are to have you as our EMD. I think you do an amazing job. Your background speaks for itself. I wish you were 20 years younger, only, not that you can't do the work of a 20-year-old younger man, but I hate to have to think I had to replace you during my watch. So hopefully you're around as long as I am. The second reason I got you is Mike Ergo, the past selectman, thought you needed to be recognized for the work you did. And I have something I want to read to you real quick while you're standing there. Just says the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, Certificate of Appreciation for Gary Barron, 2021 Northeast States Emergency Consortium Emergency Manager of the Year Award nominee. In recognition of your accomplishments and outstanding contributions to emergency management, giving on this date, December 17, 2021, signed by Brenda M. Bergeron, Deputy Commissioner. Gary, I just want to tell you, I think you deserve this so much. You do a great job. I think we have the best EMD in this part in District 4. Thanks.
Are there any questions at all?
Just want to say thank you for everything that you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Next, the American Rescue Plan Funds discussion about our workshop. So just to summarize, and you guys can summarize this with me if you'd like, but we discussed some different areas, those that weren't at the workshop. We're going to discuss more, but we've come to realize that we have, the idea was before that we have this amount of money that we were kind of giving out in dribs and drabs, and the town seemed to think that they wanted to get some finalization on how we're going to spend the balance of the funds. We have about $1.2 million left over. And rather than doing it the way we've been doing it, although we have given money to a lot of good causes in my eyes, and I think the Board of Selectmen's eyes, it's time that we look at the balance of the monies and direct them in the direction that the town wants them to go in. We had a community conversation. A lot of good information came out of that. And I think through this discussion, I think we're on the right path to come up with how we want this money to be spent. We'll have further discussions before we meet with the Board of Finance to get further approval. And then we'll go to a town meeting to get town approval. That's about it in a nutshell. Anybody want to say anything about our discussion on the American Rescue Funds? No. Sean?
So I must say that I'm a little concerned with the procedures moving forward with this. We had a community conversation where we had an opportunity to get input from people on all possible uses for this funding and so forth. And I thought overwhelmingly, the number one issue was the demolition of the middle school wing. But yet I'm hearing tonight that the town will decide out of a handful of items remaining that are still being considered versus the number one priority. In my mind, the number one priority that came out of that meeting was to take the middle school wing down. I think the people in town that came to the community conversation, took the time to do that and provide their input. I think that's going to be more than we might ever see at a town meeting for these things. I was really hoping that the selectmen would take what they heard from the community conversation and approve a plan to use the remaining balance of the ARPA funds for the demolition of the middle school and bring that forward as the number one priority that we all heard. I think that even, if you have these other smaller items that are out there, if they don't get approved at the town meeting, then you can't apply them to the demo of the school. When you say $1 million, then that, if anything else gets turned down at that meeting, then you have to come back again to apply it to the demo. I think the selectmen should say, okay, we had enough input. This is our decision moving forward, and vote on one item to move forward to the town meeting with having the results of the RFP, the amount that they're recommending, the total balance of the ARPA funds, plus so much out of our undesignated balance, and actually move forward. Otherwise, I think this could go on forever. I'm disappointed that we're going to be into the summer months, the busier months for the contractors. By delaying this further and further. I also, I don't mean any disrespect to this group of folks that are going to get together and put together to consider all the different things in this scope of work. I call it a scope of work portion of the RFP. But I think that we should have an expert write the scope of work using the hazardous waste reports hazardous material reports that we already have, looking at the schematics of the building as it is, to determine, the utilities and so forth, what needs to be changed utility wise. I think we need to hire an expert to do that. Otherwise, that may take forever for a group of guys that they're knowledgeable, they have, good input, but I think we need an engineer leading the effort on behalf of the town. And I would recommend that is how, Christine could probably write the balance of the RFP if she had an expert provide scope of work. Thank you.
Oh, good point, Sean. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, Sean, so what you disagree with is that, because I think we're all on the same page, that what we heard in the community conversation was that people wanted the middle school demolished with the ARPA funds. We were all in those sessions rounding, that's what we heard. Is it that you disagree that we're not using the entire remainder towards that? I just want to be clear on where we differ.
I'd like all the balance to be used towards that rather than possibly holding certain back for everyone's, pet projects. I think these other things could be addressed in other ways, whether it be applying for grant funding or plugging it into the budget. If they're worthy of getting done, then they'll be worthy of being included in the budget. And, just because we have this extra money coming from the state, we shouldn't be necessarily considering all these projects that don't fit into the definition of a capital item now or whatever. We say that there's mental health issues, but we haven't narrowed it down to how we'd address it or anything. I mean, you're going to set money aside for this and not know, where you're going to put it. I think once, I think that the plan for those things should be developed and presented, say if it's in the budget to ask for that, then you have those details to present with it. Otherwise, you're presenting and having concepts approved on some of those items. So I'm not saying there isn't a need for those things. I think they are going to take additional time to develop. I'd like to see the RFP go out and within a few weeks, if we can get it back by then, and with a couple weeks after that, having a town meeting.
That's exactly the plan. So we hope to have.
Well, you're talking about a town meeting in March.
So if the RFP comes out back by the end of February, and then a couple weeks later is the middle of March. But I just have to disagree on something. So it was a community conversation, which means we had breakout groups and we had multiple people speak. And I did not hear, and I'm going to ask Sean and Brett and Nicole this. In the conversation, there was even though the demolition was the number one thing that was spoken about, and we've dedicated the large portion, the lion's share of the monies, at least in our discussion so far, in the demolition, but we can't discount the fact there was a conversation, there was other ideas. It wasn't 100% unanimous, take down the building. There was people who were just as serious about mental health issues and taking care of the needy people in town and taking care of other, the older people in town. And so I think that if we heard every person in this room say, yes, demolition was number one thing, but that's not what we heard. The conversation was people rank things first, second, third, fourth, and we've got all the paperwork to show it. So if I say that, if we as a board say that we're going to put every last penny of the ARPA funds into demolition, that means we did not listen to any of the other conversation, which would be wrong.
Okay. Well, we could have that difference of opinion.
Okay. I just wanted to express my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bob, I would say I agree with you that there were other opinions and options presented or ideas presented during that day. And the majority of those opinions were to use bulk of the money for the knockdown. And I think in your presentation, that's how it was tiered for the most part, the biggest chunk towards that. I do agree that if something else gets knocked down and then there's more money for demo, how do we go back and do that? And that's something we'd all have to figure out during that time. I wouldn't say it's off the table from our discussion so far. And we don't know what that RFP comes back at. I mean, I've heard talk that the last one was high because of the bidding everything hot. So if this one, well, now we have escalation costs since then. So it might work out to be the same. But if for some reason, what if it does come in under $1 million? Who knows? And I guess we won't know more until the RFP, but we're at the end of January. The RFP goes out. I do think the RFP should go out for a decent amount of time to get the most qualified bids back. I think sometimes we send out an RFP pretty quick and we don't get a great response because it's out so quick and we're relying on people to see it in that time frame. But I think if we present it right, I think that first 2 weeks of March is a good timeline, at least to get a decision done. I think if we try to put an RFP out for 2 weeks or a week, we're not going to get the bids back that we're hoping.
Thank you, Brett. And I do think Sean's point about having as much expertise as possible when we write the RFP makes sense. So, okay, let's move over to the, unless there's any comment, let's move over to the budget. The way I want to look at the budget this evening, this is our first go around. You all have a copy of it. I mentioned to you that when we go through it, there's no need at this point to look at the budget when it comes to people that are going to be giving presentations to us, like the library, the fire company, the ambulance, the rec department, and so on. So let's concentrate a little bit on the other areas that we have more direct input into right now, and we'll wait for those presentations before we comment on those. So what we've done in the past, and we can do it however way you want to do it, but in the past boards of selectmen, we've gone through the budget line item by line item, page by page, rather, just each give a quick look, see if anything jumps out at you on that page. If not, we turn the page and so on. We'll be meeting on this multiple times between now and our presentation with the Board of Finance, which is on March 2nd. We'll have all our presentations prior to that. The first one, first presentations are a joint meeting on February 2nd, I believe, on a Wednesday. Okay. So is there any, after you've looked at this budget, is there anything that you guys want to talk about on the first page? The only comment I will make is on the revenue on the A 3.05 tuition reimbursement. I'm anticipating that number to be higher. That was for 5 students last year. And all indications are that there'll be more than 5 students this year, quite a few more, but we're waiting for that final number. Other than that, there was nothing on the first page that jumped out at me.
So just to be clear, that is out of town students paying the town to come to North Stonington
Right, at
schools.
around 11.7 tuition at this point.
Okay. Thank you. I had that question too. Thanks.
So just so ballpark, if we had 10 students total, we'd have 10 total, so it would be these 5 and another 5. We'd have roughly $110,000 of income, which would pretty much double what we have here now.
Yeah, I think the prediction is around 18 from what.
There is, but they don't pay the same. Voluntown pays
In the rear.
in October, and Preston pays in the arrears. But once, and there are students that are interested coming here from Preston, once they pay in the arrears the first time, then it starts that cycle, and you're always getting income from Preston after that.
So do we have any in the rears this year that we're going to get after the
No,
fiscal year?
No, we have already received payment for the 5 students from Voluntown that we do have, but there is no one from Preston in the current.
So if that does occur, that'll go into revenue for the next fiscal year? Okay.
okay. There's nothing else on the first page. On the second page, we had put in a number which we'll probably take out at this point until we have more discussion, transfer sticker fee. That was the number that we came up in discussions with Donnie and what the transfer station stickers would bring us at the $40, $30, $20, $10 and the senior discount. Bulky waste fees, the reason it's blank is because we don't have a number yet from Donnie on those. On property rent, A 5.15, just want to let you know that is the $35,987 is contributed by Bon Appetito Restaurant, the Hayfields, and the SCWA, which is the Southern Connecticut Water Authority. The obligation to capital on A 5.19, that's money from the Ambulance Association that was money left over on a line item that is no longer needed. The items have been purchased, and that's money's been sitting there now for a couple of years. It's not a very big de-obligation, which we all know when we de-obligate too much money, then it comes back to bite us in the butt the following year.
Bob, what's the miscellaneous? What falls under miscellaneous?
So miscellaneous revenue is pistol permit fees that come in. Honestly, it's miscellaneous things. It's anything that doesn't fit into any of the other categories, something that's not budgeted, something that just doesn't
Right.
fit
What was the
anywhere else.
big jump in 2021? What was that?
That was the Eversource credit for the school project.
Okay,
So we got one in one fiscal year, one in the next fiscal year, and we're all out of those now.
Oh.
Am I, for the next draft of the budget, am I officially taking out the number in a 5.01, or am I leaving it as a placeholder
I
still?
would take it out until further discussion.
do you think we'd get the numbers from Donnie by then? Because
Oh,
it would
sure.
be, if there is revenue coming, I'd hate to overshoot revenue though.
But we
So
still
I'd
have
be-
to get it approved.
Okay.
Right, town still has to approve it, whether it be just bulky waste or bulky waste and sticker fees will still have to be approved. Which, if it's approved in March at a town meeting, the budget doesn't get finalized and voted on until May, so. But I'd rather not have something in there. We argued about this a couple of years ago and we thought we were gonna get students in from other towns and then they didn't come in that first year because of COVID. So I'd rather not have money in here that unless we know we're gonna get it, so. Next page. Next page is the way we handled, because there's not been negotiations yet with the unions. They're going to be starting probably the end of February, early March, I'm thinking. So we put a 2% increase in. I'm sure there'll be people negotiating when they know that the seniors Social Security was a 5.9% increase and inflation's what it is. But they also I know I got a 5.9% increase because I'm old enough to get that. But I also got my Medicare got raised from 141 to 172. So it was like, thank you very much for the raise. But other than that, so we put 2% in just as a placeholder for now until we can sit down and negotiate with the unions and we know where they want to be. You know, when you do union negotiations, it's both on salary and on medical. So what portion of the medical they pay. So we've had our first meeting with our labor attorney, and then we'll be starting those meetings with the labor unions probably again at the end of February, early March. The only thing I changed on here, you might notice, is the second and third selectmen's pay. I'm not sure which one of you was which, but get the same amount of money. So I did put in a bump to you guys for $3,000. You see the decrease in my pay. It's really not a decrease in pay. That was the additional monies that we owed last year in keeping with the last first selectman at his salary through the end of his term. So that's why we had to carry the extra $6,250. I was voted on and elected at $50,000 a year, and I'll be glad to stay with that through my term as first selectman.
So is that for all the elected offices? So the 2%?
You guys are not 2%. Your jump is more than 2%.
So the 2% increase is on all, it's easier to say who it's not. So it's not the first selectman, it's not the other two selectmen, it's not the building official, it's not the secretary. We did a different increase for her, and it's not the grant writer. Everyone else is a 2%.
So the treasurer, the registrar?
Yes.
Okay. And then a question on B603. So Quality Data Services, are we under contract with them or how does that work? It seems like a big increase.
Honestly, I don't know if there's a contract with it. I also don't know what other company we would go with for that. This is the printing of the bills and all of that,
Right.
the actual computer related expense. I know this is labeled computer expenses because it is the computer expense of printing the bills, but there's another piece to it that falls under the IT budget as well.
Okay. Because when I looked at your breakdown, it was like a $2,400 increase for, I think it said inflation of QDS. So I just would like to know if we can find out if there's a contract or how's that work, because it's gone up quite a bit over the past 3 years.
Okay, yeah, I don't even know other companies and I wouldn't know how to, I don't
Okay.
know.
I can look into it.
Yeah.
See. All right.
I just want to make a comment. So Bob, I think it's really admirable, the 50,000 for the first selectman. I do think in the future, with whatever may happen, 50,000 could potentially make it difficult to recruit qualified people for that. You're in office during this budget. I worry about that 50,000.
So my opinion is, I was elected at that number, and I think that could be a discussion for next year's budget.
Yeah,
Because at the end of, see what kind of job I do, what the people want to do as far as, do I want to run again? Do they want to elect me again? Is there somebody that would be coming to town to be a better first select person? That all could happen. So we can make that discussion for next year's budget.
yeah, it's just a comment. I don't think we need to
But-
do anything. I think it's, like I said, it's admirable. I just think that in the future, we have to think about the candidates that we potentially might attract. And
No, I agree. I think that number just kind of pigeonholes it to someone that's either retired, that
Mhm.
someone's got themselves set up fairly decent for
Yeah.
retirement, someone that owns their own business that, kind of like the first selectman owned the business, but it was a new business he was trying to start. If it was a well-heeled 20-year business that could run on its own, it would be different. You know, you'd be able to spend more time doing this. So I think that it's a tough, you can't quit your job and become the first selectman here and live
No,
on that
not-
money.
And I think the Board of Finance, when they set that last year, was more trying to discuss whether it was a reduced hour role or full-time. And I think there was back and forth on it. And I think unfortunately, Bob is the guinea pig right now to see how many hours is needed at town hall and how does that work out and how much stuff does Christine do for her role and how much is she allowed to do and figure all that out because everything was new when Christine came in between that role and how much it cost for our overhead of government. And I think that was the reason Board of Finance set it back down to the 50 to try to figure out where should it be.
Mhm. So I think that's, again, a good conversation for maybe next year's budget, for the budget after this budget season, the next season budget, which is 2023, 24.
So
Okay.
do we have any updated, well, I guess it's still early to see where our expenditures are on some of these line items, right?
I did print, in case you guys asked, I have it, if you want to know about specific lines. I don't have copies for you. I just have
Oh,
them
okay.
to answer questions.
Not yet. Thank you.
We do need to adjust B 2.00 expenses for probate court, because we received, after this was printed, we received the update from the town of Groton, because that's who we pay, because they house the court. So it needs to go up $55 to $2,875. So that will be reflected on the next draft.
And then I guess some of the questions, well, you might have that, since you have that sheet. Under the assessors, when we talk about seminars and travel expenses, where are we? Where does that usually fall in?
So nothing has been spent this year on either of those things. With seminars being virtual, there haven't really been costs on that. I think the travel would be for seminars. I don't think that when Daryl drives out to do inspections in town, he doesn't charge mileage back because he's staying in town. So I think he is up for, I want to say he needs to recertify in this upcoming budget year. So there may be additional requirements for him for continuing education because of that.
And then like the $700 office expenses increase, is there anything specific?
yeah, I saw that office expenses for a couple of the different people have gone
So
up.
there's a motor vehicle increase that we're getting from DMV. That's why there's the adjustment for the office expenses. In the SharePoint that you guys have access to, there's a breakdown from motor vehicle that explains what that increase is.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, any questions on page 4? Go to page 5.
Town treasurer is not going, no seminars.
I asked and was told that if he chooses to go to any, he will fund them on his own,
Okay, great.
but I did ask.
Next page, page 5. We're gonna, when we get down to B11, we'll just stop there on this page because that's actually further in the budget. It's been moved a couple of years ago, I guess. And we'll, plus we're gonna hold on that anyway because we'll have presentations on the land use office. But we can start with B8 all the way down through B10.5 if there's any questions.
So the town attorney B8, where are we to date?
We have paid $17,476.50 to date. And the actual town attorney bills quarterly, not monthly.
Okay.
So for our labor attorney and our contracts attorney, they bill monthly. And then Avina and Keppel, also part of Shushman Shapiro, bill us quarterly.
Okay. So our new contract negotiations are happening.
Well,
They're this fiscal year.
they're this
Okay.
fiscal year.
So that was budgeted in that 30 from last year?
It was, but it also, we spent 28,000 in FY 21, so 30 seemed like a reasonable number.
So Bob, do you think you'll be using the town attorney as much as prior administrations?
I don't. But I want to make sure we're covered. We never know.
Make sure we have it. And that doesn't include land use attorney, right?
Correct. This is
Okay.
just, this is everything else. So if the assessor needs the town attorney, if this year we'll have, we may have additional expenses with leasing out part of the 298, that would fall under this because that's contracts. So.
Okay. And then my other question, so the assistant town clerk, I know it's like a fill-in position.
It's a stipend position.
So
through
we
the-
don't,
through
when's the
the
last
union.
time that stipend position was increased?
Not in the last, definitely not in the last 3 years in the current union contract. It may have been increased before that. So that also would be subject to union negotiation.
And that's in this current negotiation?
Correct.
Okay.
I just want to point out that B 10.04 Records Restoration Grant, that is a grant that's offset on the revenue side that the town clerk receives, and it is based on the size town we are. So that's why that's set at $5,500.
Can I just ask what the, under annexation, the B 9.01 tribal recognition, just explain to me
Yeah, I'll explain
what that is?
Okay, so when I first became a selectman, we had a meeting with first selectman Murphy and Nick Mullane. Basically, we had paid for attorney services to watch backs us, Preston and Legend, as far as any tribal recognition that might be taking place. Because if there's a tribal recognition day takes place, we'll say with the tribe that happens to be in North Stonington, it could cause problems down the road for the town as far as giving up lands and so on, similar to what happened with the Mashantuckets. That line was funded at $20,000 the first year I was a selectman. Got dropped down to $10,000 the next 2 years, and I think it's been $5,000 now the last two. We still sign the paperwork. We still tell the attorney, his name is Bauer, that we're involved. We want to stay involved with Legend and Preston. It's a tri-town thing we all contribute to, because we all could be affected by it. So it's pretty much a placeholder at almost a minimum amount of money at this stage.
So if anything were to be filed with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, then they would represent us for any of that action. With the Eastern Pequot tribe is the tribe.
Okay.
Anyone say a question?
So just one more question. So we're paying this fee. So the 2021, the 4,320, that's money we paid to, in the tri-town, to this attorney to keep watch on any kind of tribal recognition.
We only get charged for any work that's actually done. So if, I think memos had to be written to respond to a petition in that particular year. So the current year, we haven't been invoiced for anything.
Okay, so, but if they do decide, let's say next year, there is action and there's something happening, are you saying that because well, no, it's not like, they're not going to represent us for no money?
Correct. We have to pay for services.
Okay, all right.
If it was a flat fee.
Yeah.
Like,
Any other questions on that page?
So the EDC is coming to
Right.
to present or no?
Yes.
Right, so we'll be holding through that page, rest of that page, recreation.
We
Fi-
could
fix-
talk about B20, B21, or B22.
Okay.
Can I just bring up something about recreation, since we're talking budget?
Sure.
And I know they're coming to present, but this is something, as I was looking through some of the state statutes and our own, I showed it to Christine this morning, but I'd like to try to see if you guys are in favor of moving this to a town meeting. But state statute allows the Park and Rec Commission to, for the town to create a park and recreation capital and non-reoccurring expense fund. And I can read it to you if you guys want. It says, as used in this section, municipality means the city, town, borough, district, or association with municipal powers, which has within its jurisdiction and subject to its authority, holds or acquires any land or facilities for park recreational use, meaning recreation authority means the committee or commission within the government of a municipality responsible for the administration or supervision of parks or recreation, the legislative body of any municipality which has no such committee or commission, or the Board of Selectmen of any town which has no committee or commission, and the legislative body of which the town meeting or representative town meeting. It says, any municipality by vote of its legislative body may establish a special fund, which shall be known as the Park and Recreation Capital and Non-Reoccurring Expense Fund. There shall be deposited in said fund all monies received by the municipality from whatever source and by whatever means as gifts for park or recreation purposes. All money received by the municipality from whatever source and by whatever means as governmental grants or loans for park or recreational purposes. All monies received by the municipality from the sale or voluntary or involuntary conveyance of land used for park or recreational purposes. All monies appropriated to said fund by the municipality. And it says, C, said fund shall be in the custody of the treasurer of or other officer in charge of funds for the municipality. All or any part of the monies in said fund may from time to time be invested in any securities in which public funds may lawfully be invested. All income derived from such investments shall be paid to the fund, become their part thereof the fund. The money so invested shall at all times be subject to withdrawal from such investment for use of as provided in subsection E of this section. So we're getting to the good part.
Yeah, could you give me a synopsis?
Yes. I'll read E, which is the real purpose of this fund. It says, upon authorization of the body in such municipality having the power of appropriation, the monies in said fund may be used for capital and non-reoccurring expenditures incurred in any of the following. One, acquisition, development, improvement, maintenance, and expansion of park and recreation lands. Two, acquisition, erection, installation, maintenance, improvement, repair, and replacement of park or recreation facilities and equipment. And three, development, establishment, and improvement of park recreation programs, or for any other capital or non-recurring expenditure incurred for park and recreational purposes. No budget proposed or approved or appropriation made for park or recreational purposes in any municipality shall be reduced ratably or otherwise in consideration of any monies in this fund. So like any state statute, it's a lot, but basically what it also allows is Park and the Recreation Commission to get to raise funds from outside sources as well. Whether it be a business that wants to donate to the Parks and Rec Commission to build a new playground or do a one-time purchase of uniforms and sponsorships. And it allows it to stay in this fund and be used for a variety of different things. Talking to Christine, there is some kind of account that was set up, maybe you can clarify that, allows them to raise funds for a specific project, but not in general. So they have to have a named project, but this state statute allows us to potentially change whatever ordinance that, I didn't see an ordinance on it, but there has to be one somewhere.
So the current ordinance is section 14-1 Recreation Commission and subsection C expending monies. The last sentence of it, gifts made specifically to Recreation Commission for specific recreation purposes may be retained by the commission in a special gift account until used for intended purposes. So the way it is right now, they can accept donations for anything, but it has to be, I, Arnold Lumber, am donating $2,000 for basketball uniforms. And that goes into a specific account just to be used for basketball uniforms. It can't be used for soccer uniforms. It can't be used for a pavilion. It can't be used for anything else. It is retained in perpetuity. It does not expire. It's not an operating account. It is still, it's a gift fund. But it has to be for a specific named purpose. So we can't just accept general donations to be used for recreation. So if you wanted a general, and so in order to use this statute that Brett is referencing, you would have to change the ordinance to remove that sentence, because this sentence in our ordinance conflicts with the statute.
Right, so it would, in this process, in our budget process, it allows, I found it's a good time to bring it up, and especially if we're looking to do something here as well, that adopting the state statute the way it is here allows the rec commission more latitude in going out and doing some fundraising and trying to get money for some of the things that, you know, taxpayers don't want to pay for, quite frankly.
Did the rec commission come to you with this, or did you go?
No, I found it when I was going through some other state statutes on different budget ideas and things like that. I did reach out to Megan, the chair of the rec commission, and go over it with her. And she thought it would be nice to have, because she mentioned that they always were trying to figure out ways to raise funds for rec, and it was limited.
I'll just speak for myself that I need a lot more information and a lot more clarity, because I listened to your statutes and those things confuse me anyway.
Right, I'll send it all to you guys, but I just wanted to bring it up here so you're aware of it. And if we can correlate it to a town meeting, because we want to.
And the town would be able to have access to know how much is always in that account, similar to the Board of Education's non-lapsing account and the,
Yeah, I think that somewhere in here, there's talking about there has to be a report of said fund. Yeah, detailed report of the condition of said fund, which report shall be made part of the annual municipal report.
I'm not opposed, so I just want to learn more about it, that's all.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy. You can have a paper one. I know you like paper. But I'll send you one, Nicole, as well.
Thank you.
And then we can talk about it. But I thought if we're having a town meeting in March, if we can try to fit one more thing in so we don't have to have extra ones, it's a good timeline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on this page? If you see on B 2206, Christine mentioned this earlier, we're carrying $100,000 for North Education Center operating expenses. That would be offset by any income we could get through leasing any portion of this building.
Oh, I had a question on the quarterly.
On what?
The quarterly.
Mhm.
What did we spend? So it says we spent exactly $6,000 in 2021.
Yes, because we went over a little bit, so we had to use money out of the communications committee line. So we spent 6,000 out of the quarterly and a little bit more out of another line.
Okay. So even with the increased every door direct mail costs and stuff like that, they have the 4 budgeted in here with printing.
I was not asked to increase the line, so I left it.
Okay.
This year to date, they've spent $3,585.10.
Can I ask, are you done? Sorry.
Sure.
Can I ask B 20.07 and 08, the volunteer fire company's volunteer longevity award and the volunteer activity stipend? Can somebody just educate me on that?
Well, that'll come up in their
Okay, perfect.
presentation.
Sorry. Yep.
And they'll explain to you. They have a whole breakout.
Okay. And then what do we still have at Holly Green? I know it's just 1,000.
The
The
senior
senior center.
So it's $139 a month for the
Oh,
condo association
Okay.
fee for the senior center.
Those
Okay.
are probably going up, just so you know. I just don't have the numbers on that.
We need notification of that to include it in the budget, please.
Okay, on the next page, page 7, social services, couple of notations. So if you see most social services ask for an increase. Pocatuck Neighborhood Center asked for $40,000. They were $27,500. My own opinion is to put that back to $30,000, not 40, because we just gave them 1% or $15,000 out of our ARPA funding. I admit that the fact that they're coming into the Wheeler Library now on 1 day a week, and we have more people from North Stonington using them, I think that warrants the increase from 27.5 to 30,000. But the fact that we've already given them the extra 15,000, I don't think it warrants it going all the way to 40. Just my opinion.
I agree. I think going to 40 seems pretty extreme.
Um,
They're a valued service, but I think it's a lot for us to take in 1 year.
And I took every other proposed increase and put it back down to where it was in 2021, 2022. TVCCA, we also gave them $2,000 out of ARPA funding.
So do you see that going, you want to lower that back to 1250?
Yeah, I put everyone that was on the increase, put them back to where they were last year, except for the Pocatuck Neighborhood Center, because they're doing so much, but I dropped it from 40 to 30.
Okay. In New London Arc, have they just not come forward with a request?
Correct. I only put things in here if they've submitted an ask.
Okay, as we move down a little bit farther, the troopers, has at least not recently, have not given us a presentation on the line number B 2604. We're showing 441,784. Of that, $50,000 of that number is what they call discretionary overtime. Last year, that brought that to us, and we dropped that. I think there's definitely room there to move down. They throw 50,000 at it, but you know, we haven't had all the events we've had in the last few years because of the pandemic. But we don't have to do it tonight, but I'm just saying down the road, we might want to look at that as a place that we can drop down the budget if need be.
I have a few questions on that, actually.
Go ahead.
And they do a great job. And I have to say, Trooper McCarthy has been fantastic, especially with the COVID, handing out masks and tests on his really day off. He volunteered to come in and help. I thought that was great. So when I looked in the breakdown, you know, it always boggles my mind how much we pay for police at the fair. So it's about $23,000. Do we pay 100% of that?
Yes, and there was a bill that went
Yeah,
through the
right here.
legislature last year that said that we can't charge for it. So
No, I don't think there's one that says you can't charge for it.
that was what I read.
So maybe there's another one. So I talked to Representative Howard today about it. And there was one that was proposed and it made it to public hearing, but then it never went anywhere else, where we would only be charged for 85% like we are for the regular. So I think it would be beneficial for us to send a letter to Senator Summers and Greg Howard to see if they can reintroduce this, because at least it would give us a 15% reduction in that, because it is shocking that we fund all of that. I did look into other towns, and other towns do bill for certain entities when they have events like this. I don't even think the fair makes that much money, so it'd be interesting. But then I saw that we also pay for Chickabuso for the run, the Education Foundation, which I guess with the Education Foundation, that money always comes back to our schools. But do we have any parameters in place or rules of what we pay for when it comes to the trooper? So if another entity comes forward and says they're doing a run as well, are we setting an expectation that we pay for the troopers for all these?
I don't know. We would need to look into if we're allowed to charge people back for the troopers, because I don't know the parameters on that.
I know the other towns do it with their private police, well, their own police departments. I
Right,
don't
but
know with
with
the
it being
state.
a resident trooper program, we would have to ask them.
Yeah,
We're
'cause-
allowed to do that.
And I'm not saying we need to do this on the ones we have, but I worry that we're setting a precedence that any event that somebody has in North Stonington, we're footing the bill for the police presence. And I think that could get dicey at some point.
Agreed, but I guess if you issue the permit, then your job is to keep the public safe. So if we've issued the permit, then it's our job to keep the public safe, right?
But I know for instance, Stonington, they bill the chamber for certain things for when they have the taste of, when they have certain parades, when it's a private like parade, they do it. And when they have certain runs that they bill those functions. And most of them have committees that generate funds to host these events.
So we
And
can
those
talk
are
to-
the ones that
We'll talk to Jason, plus I have a meeting with their troopy commander, lieutenant. I can't do his last name on the 23rd of February, so.
So do you think we can write a letter to trying to bring this bill back? And I'll send this to you as well. I don't know if we have to vote on it or if you can just do it as first selectman.
We can send a letter, it doesn't have a problem.
Because it made it pretty far, and if it gets further, basically the state is saying it's for any agricultural fair that the state pretty much pays 15%.
Okay, Nicole, anything on this page?
What is engineering for selectmen? What is the, in
I asked
B24?
Christine the same question, so. Go ahead, Christine, explain.
So we have, in case there's special projects that need to be done, whether it's something related to highways or something related to dams or anything that's going on, if we need to contract out for engineering on a project, there's different engineering firms that we would work with, and this is just the amount that's in there in case we need it. So
So I can use this for engineering to help us write an RFP for 298 then.
it could, yeah.
Have we spent anything year to date?
I haven't.
I don't think
Well, ac-
so.
oh.
Nope.
And one last, the digitalized maintenance for IT,
Yes.
B2502, what's the big increase there?
Okay, 2502, it reflects the increases for QDS. So it's a $700 increase on the tax collector side, a $1,620 increase on the equality assessor side. It's the $1,505 that we will need to pay for annual maintenance on Infinite Visions, which is the new financial software.
So that the QDS, the 700, that's not in their increase on the tax collector side?
As I mentioned earlier, some of it gets paid out of the IT budget for the maintenance of the software, and then some of it gets paid out of the tax collector. So this is just the IT side.
Okay.
But there in your supporting documents, there is a letter from QDS explaining the increase.
Is that in your spreadsheet file?
It's in the link that I
Okay.
shared earlier. So I'll just read it because it's short. Over the past 10 years, QDS has successfully controlled costs in lieu of inflationary pressures. We have always kept cost increases under 3%. And in fact, several years we had 0% increases. Unfortunately, this year, inflation has driven up costs dramatically. Costs of wages and employee benefits to hire and retain the best programmers, managers, and support staff, as well as cost of materials, fuel, and utilities have increased 6 to 8%. For 2022, 2023, the average increase in software licensing, support and maintenance, IT services, and printing and mailing services will be 5%. Customers with multi-year contractual obligations will not be subject to this increase, but rather subject to the terms of their original agreement. Over the past 40 years, QDS has continuously reinvested into our people and products to provide our customers with the best possible products and support. Its principle we built our company on will never change. We have many exciting,
Yeah.
So that's the increase on that. They handle all of the support that we need. There's no additional, it's not, we can only call X number of times for help. It's a unlimited contract for support. on both the assessor side and the tax collector side. And especially with the new tax collector, we are definitely getting our money's worth on support for QDS.
Okay. Thank you.
On page 8, we're gonna hold everything except down to B28.
Can I just bring up one thing that I know Donnie is going to present, but I'd like to see if we can get this for that presentation. Under B2707, I'd like to see a breakdown by basically department. So Donnie mentioned during their tour of the highway garage that he could do it with the computer system. So I'd like to see what the ambulance service is using for fuel and what the fire department is compared to what our highway department is. I know it all falls under highway, but I think those dollar values should be contributed, at least in our minds, to those departments.
Okay, I can ask them for that.
Thank you.
Okay. B2807 Health District, that's Ledgelight, in case we didn't know. Any questions on this page?
How long is our contract with them? And when is it renew or?
It's not it doesn't work that way. It's an automatically renewing contract that unless both parties have to, by a certain date in the calendar year, they have to make notification that they're not going to renew it. So it's an automatically renewing.
Is there a reason to want to look at changing for some reason?
No, I'm always just curious because we've talked about in the past about how long the contract is, and some people thought 5 years. Nobody.
Okay, next page. Senior citizens. She's not going to. Teresa's probably not going to give a presentation. I think she did 3 years ago. But so she's covered agent for the elderly, that number, and the senior center coordinator, that number. They're both the same person. They're both Teresa holds 2 different positions. So that's her pay for the year, 38,000 and change.
One thing I want to point out with B29.03 operating expenses, that includes $5,000 expenses for trips, which is offset by a $5,000 revenue line that we added in a 5 point something. So those used to be handled separately, but now we've incorporated them into the budget. So there is an offset. Her actuals were so low for FY21 because many of her programs could not happen with COVID. But we do offer free programs for the seniors, including quilting, Tai Chi, chair yoga, sewing, painting. So there are a lot of different services that are offered at no cost to our residents.
Do we know why the operating expenses have gone up so much over the last? I mean, they were 17 something and now they're 32.
So the only real increase was the $5,000. It's just that she didn't have any of the programs, so the operations
Okay.
didn't
Okay.
happen.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Yeah.
But her heat is electric up at the senior center. So that's another reason why I didn't want to reduce her expenses
Okay.
at all, because the cost of electricity does continue to go up. She does have solar panels to offset, but they can only do so much.
And the library is coming. Is Amy coming in the
Yeah.
future? Okay.
Yeah, they'll be here on the 16th.
Yeah, because that's a big increase too.
Yeah.
Anything else on that page?
Now, the weed control, we're going down because
So this year, the year we're in right now had a grant and a town match. So that's why it was 31,000. So we are not applying for that grant. So this would just have the $15,000 contribution on the town side.
Okay.
So yes, just remember as a board, anything you're expending, even if it has a grant match to it, has to be represented in the expenditure side of the budget.
Okay, next, B34 is Land Use Department, which we'll hold on until they present, unless you have a question. Not, then we're over to capital. So when we get to capital, there's some just explanations. C 1.09 dump truck refurbish, $10,000. That was been in there He gets knocked out pretty much every year. So far, we've been knocking out. He's been asking for it for a number of years. So when he comes, he'll talk about that. The next line item, tractor and mower 2019, that's on a 5-year lease agreement. There's a bulky waste number that we did put in for 25,000, Nicole, to get us prepared for somewhere down the road. So we can either increase that, decrease that, offset that, depending on if we come up with bulky waste fees. Down to,
Is he gonna present on the Mack truck replacement of the real need?
yes. Main acquisition funds, C3.15. Used to have a bigger number, like 10,000 a year, could drop down to $1,000 as a placeholder for the last couple of years. I think the original request was around $20,000, then they'll put in for $10,000, and they got 73,000 in there right now. There's not anything on the table for the town to purchase. As far as land is also can be used because of the ordinance change a couple of years ago. We can also use it towards maintenance of town buildings. So I'm looking to decrease that 10,000 down to 7,000, which you can round it up. That would give us a round figure of $80,000 in that line at this point. But again, that can be further discussion.
Yeah, I think that's still too much. I'm not sure. I understand the point of it to a certain extent. But I'm not sure why we do it this way. So we have our undesignated fund that you'd have to go to a town meeting to acquire land that would eventually come out of it. So with this fund, any expenditure has to go to a town vote. So when we look at it this way, are we just budgeting so it's in there so we feel better when we go to the town saying, hey, this money's you've already been taxed on this money, it's already here, so we can feel more comfortable voting to use it that way? I just feel like if we're keep putting money in, we're just pre-taxing our residents for some things that we don't have stipulated uses for. You know, when you read through the ordinance, when you read through the state statutes on it, and yes, we could utilize it for more things than has ever been brought up. And I know the Conservation Commission is the one that requested, but it's not their fund. They have no jurisdiction over this fund at all. And I guess if we were to utilize it for other things, and we look into those things that when we talk about budget season, about maintenance of our outdoor space or any of those things, I just think we don't really have a clear plan of how we utilize it on more of a regular basis. So we're just stockpiling money in there for the unknown.
Nicole, any thoughts on that?
Not particularly right now.
Okay.
Do you, I guess, do you have a reason why you're bringing it to 7,000? So up 6,000 from?
Yeah, because I like round numbers. We've been going down we brought it from 10 to 1,000 the last couple of years. I don't think it's a bad thing to have money in that account since the ordinance was changed. It's just not for purchasing open space property anymore.
So, Bill Ricker, he sent us an email? Is that what this is regarding? Just asking for?
They asked for 20,000.
Asking for
No.
20 to be put back in that had been cut for several years in a row. The last time it was used, I thought that the email said was for the Hewitt Farm property. I mean, to me, that's Hewitt property is a wonderful, wonderful addition to the town. I know times are tough. I don't think that we can spare 20, but I don't have a problem with 10 or 7. But I think we need something in there in case something does come on the market that would be beneficial for us to have.
Which is
Is that, am
true,
I
but
not, am I
I just think,
interpreting it a different way than it's meant for?
no, that's one of the reasons it's meant for those things. You know, when you read the state statute, it even talks about using it to purchase housing. We don't have that in our ordinance, but that's when that the state allowed it with the the state statute. My point is if something came up like this
You would just
again,
use the undesignated
and
fund.
I think that's what we did with the original Hewitt Farm purchase. This wasn't.
It came
used-
out of
It
undesignated.
came out of undesignated fund. What was it, 600,000? Do you know? Yeah. And I mean, there was times I was looking through old selectmen minutes from trying to figure out when it was
Yeah,
originally.
You need a
staffed.
hobby.
I know, right? But there was a time where the Board of Finance requested that all of the money from this from this fund go back into the undesignated fund, and they voted to do that. So
As
that
long
was
as we
my
have
question.
something somewhere that if a piece of property that would be really beneficial for the town to have, as long as we have something somewhere put aside, if it's the undesignated fund, I'm fine. If it's this, the nice thing about the undesignated fund is that it's not like we can't use this money for anything else. So it just sits there all year, 2 years, not using it if something doesn't come up. But as long as
can
we have
use it-
something available to us, that if something came up, we could talk to the town about purchasing it.
We can use it for maintenance of open space, which we don't ever use. So I wonder why we don't use it for that, because that comes into our budgeting of other things.
That's in the line item that you can use it because it just says land acquisition.
Yeah, it's the land acquisition fund,
Are you going by state statute or by our ordinance?
our ordinance.
Please don't read the ordinance. I don't think I can do it, Brett.
So I'll just read the 3 points. Appraisal, acquisition, and preservation costs relating to parcels of land or
Oh, so
easement.
preserve, all right.
I don't think maintenance and preservation are the same.
If you're preserving it, helping preserve its natural state, that's maintenance, right?
I disagree.
Well, we don't have to decide right now, right?
We do
Okay.
not. let's
So
get
you
back
were
on track.
proposing going from 10 to 7, is that what
I
you were
was,
proposing?
and we'll do a final budget,
Okay.
the three of us prior to going to the Board of Finance. Because
Okay.
we have more information to come in, we have more presentations to be done, things will be changing. So I
Okay.
mean, this is unfortunately, it's the first go around, sometimes it's the longest go around because there's a lot of explanations that have to be done, which is.
Yeah,
The last thing on this page I want to talk about is C3.42 and SAA ambulance and stretcher lease payment. 64,685.00. This is the final year of a 5-year number. Yeah, the 5 years, we paid $326,500 for a new ambulance and the stretchers that go with it. Because again, this is the final payment, and I want to make sure that everyone knows it's not the ambulance, it's the stretchers too. The ambulance, I guess, on ballpark, from what I talked to, when I talked to Legend about an ambulance situation, they said the ambulance cost them roughly around $250,000.
Right.
Okay.
C3-35, the farmhouse repair. So are we leaving that? You're talking about leaving that in at $30,000?
That'll be a discussion for a future meeting coming up shortly. As part of my discussion with Hewitt Farm on Monday. Because that we have to decide as a town, the direction we want to take on that with the restoration, how we want to restore, if we do, and to what level. And that's all I have for the budget for this evening's first go through. Can they pick up the pace a little bit here? Go ahead.
So the only thing for the school capital is the parking lot. That was decided at that last.
That's
meeting,
correct. That's correct. Okay, number 9, appointments. We have a couple of appointments tonight. Why don't we start with the one for internet?
So the ordinances of the town dictate that the town clerk needs to be reappointed after 4 years. As far as the state is concerned, she is appointed in perpetuity until she is no longer our town clerk. But based on our statutes, the Board of Selectmen needs to reappoint her for another 4-year term. Her 4-year anniversary is in January, so you just need to motion to approve her for a new.
Make a motion to approve her appointment.
I second that.
Okay, so there's a motion by Brett and then a second by Nicole to approve the appointment of Antoinette
And Caro.
Pincaro as a wonderful town clerk that she is. All, let's take a roll, and this is discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, 3-0. And we have two other appointments this evening. Seeing you have those with you. One is Emily Lewis,
Yep,
correct?
so on the Economic Development Commission to move Emily Lewis from an alternate to a full member position. The other is to add a new EDC member, Mariah Pfiffner. We're gonna say,
Raya Fifth, no, yes. I believe she's one of the owners of Tim Peddler, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
I make a motion to appoint both as presented.
I second that.
Okay, great. Any discussion?
I just, I think this will be a nice new mix on the EDC, and I think it, now they have a full members for the sitting board, and I think they're geared up to do some good things.
I agree. Okay, then, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor of making these two appointments to the EDC, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Okay. I think that covers for our appointments. The US meeting liaisons and board and commissions. Nicole, I think you brought this up the other, at one of the last meetings in your packet.
Oh, yes.
There's a
Yep.
list. So what I thought we'd do with this list is, why don't we each take this list home with us? Why don't you just pick out the commissions, committees, boards that you'd like to attend on occasion, so we can split it up a bit. I think in the beginning, as being new selectmen, we all tried to get to as many as we could so we could meet all the players on the different boards. But if you and Brett have particular boards that you'd like to go to, there's no sense of us all going to the same meeting. So we can come back and report back. When we first started with myself and Nita, we did that, and then we'd come back to the meeting and we'd have a little section of the meeting where we could report back on board meetings. So the other two selectmen would know what happened. So if that's good with you, I'm just going to ask you to take this home and bring it back at the next meeting. We can put it as a part of old business at the next meeting. Okay, minutes. Nicole, you're on.
All righty. I make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen, January 10th, 2022 special meeting minutes as written in our packets.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes for January 10th, special meeting 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those are respectfully submitted by Bob Carlson. Just want to mention that. I can write the short minutes. It's the long
Yeah, you're a
ones.
man of few words for those special meetings.
So luckily we have Ivana who writes the long ones, and hope she's either watching
God
this now or she'll
Bless her
watch.
tonight. I'm telling you.
Yeah, good luck.
If she's still awake. I make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen, January 11th, 2022 meeting minutes as written in our packet.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, if none, all those in favor of approving the January 11th regular meetings by the Board of Selectmen, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye. 2-0. Okay, brings us to public comments. Do we have any public comments by either those in the audience or those online?
Anybody still awake out there?
Brian Rathburn.
Brian, go ahead.
God bless him.
Yeah, great meeting, by the way. The one thing I missed what you were saying about the budget with the selectmen's pay. I'm a firm believer, you guys and girls are
No, go ahead, Brian, I'm sorry.
kids of the whole town. And I think you deserve a respectful and comparable wage that compares. I mean, I hear people saying we're comparing us to this town, that town, but I think you deserve a comparable wage. And I wouldn't be afraid to add some into the selectmen's budget for the selectmen's pay, because it's been years before I haven't seen that go up in years. And I just think as a citizen of this town, the job I see you guys doing and the ones in the past deserve it. It's a lot on your shoulders, and I think you ought to be compensated for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Christine? Okay.
Motion to
From the
adjourn.
audience? No.
I
All right.
second.
Okay, then. The next meeting will be February 2nd at 7 PM against, that would be with the finance, I said against, be a joint meeting with the finance committee, who was not against them. 7 PM. And other than that, we'll look for an adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The adjournment took place at 9:52. 8:52. Oh, it feels like 9:52.
I'm sure it seems like
Ivana, that was 8:52, Ivana, not 9:52.
everybody's home in their pajamas, but Sean, you get a prize